Blood doesn't lie, but people do. Everyone believed Damian Moretti, New York's most feared crime lord, lost his sight after assassins put 3 bullets in his chest outside a Manhattan penthouse. They watched him stumble home wearing dark designer glasses, leaning on a silver cane, looking like death warmed over. His enemies celebrated. His empire prepared for a funeral. But Damian wasn't blind, he was hunting. From the shadows of his own mansion, he watched his world rot from the inside. Guards stealing jewelry, servants laughing at the crippled king, trusted allies whispering about succession before his body was even cold. Everyone treated him like trash. Everyone except Rosalie Mercer, a plus-sized housemaid drowning in debt who looked him dead in the eye and saw straight through the lie. That's when Damian realized she was either the most dangerous woman in his house or the only honest soul left in his empire. And in his world, honesty was deadlier than any bullet. If you want to see how far a broken king will go to reclaim his throne, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Rain hammered against the estate's towering glass walls like fists demanding entry. Rosalie Mercer dragged a canvas laundry cart across the marble foyer, her lower back screaming with every step. The clock above the grand staircase read 11:47 p.m., which meant she'd been on her feet for 16 hours straight. Again. "Hey, Rosie!" Marcus Vale's voice cut through the empty hallway like a blade wrapped in velvet. "You missed a spot." Rosalie stopped. The estate's consigliere stood at the top of the stairs wearing a tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than her yearly salary. He pointed toward a crimson smear on the white marble near the entrance, blood that hadn't quite been scrubbed away after the boss came home 3 weeks ago riddled with bullets. "I'll get it," Rosalie said quietly. Marcus smiled. "Good girl. Wouldn't want our blind king tripping over his own mess, would we?" The words hung in the air like poison. Rosalie kept her expression neutral, even as rage burned behind her ribs. She'd worked at the Moretti estate for 8 months, long enough to learn that keeping your mouth shut was the only survival skill that mattered. Marcus descended the stairs, footsteps echoing. "You know what I love about you, Rosie? You're invisible. People talk around you like you're furniture." He leaned closer, cologne mixing with the faint smell of gunpowder that seemed to follow everyone in this house. "That makes you useful. Or dangerous. Haven't decided which yet." Rosalie met his eyes for exactly 1 second, long enough to show she wasn't afraid, short enough to avoid a problem. "I just clean, Mr. Vale?" "Sure you do." He straightened his tie and walked past her toward the front door. "Keep it that way." The moment he disappeared into the rain-soaked night, Rosalie exhaled. Her hands trembled as she knelt beside the bloodstain with a bottle of bleach and a scrub brush. The marble was expensive. Carrara white, imported from Italy, probably worth more than her mother's house back in Queens. She attacked the stain like it owed her money. Blood was stubborn. It always fought back. Just like the man who'd bled here. Rosalie had been mopping the second-floor hallway the night Damian Moretti came home from the hospital. She'd watched from the shadows as 4 bodyguards carried him through the entrance, his designer suit shredded, bandages wrapped around his chest, dark glasses covering his eyes. The king had returned looking like a corpse, and everyone had smiled. Not the kind of smile you give someone you're relieved to see alive. The kind you give a dying animal you're too cowardly to shoot yourself. Rosalie scrubbed harder. The bleach fumes burned her nostrils, but the stain was almost gone. Almost. "You'll ruin the finish if you keep going like that." The voice came from directly behind her. Rosalie's heart stopped. She turned slowly, still on her knees, bleach-soaked brush dripping onto the marble. Damian Moretti stood 10 feet away in the shadowed archway leading to his private study. No cane, no stumbling. Just a tall, broad-shouldered man in black slacks and a half-buttoned white shirt, watching her with the kind of stillness that made predators so terrifying. And his eyes, cold, gray, utterly focused, stared directly at her. Not through her, not past her. At her. Rosalie's mouth went dry. "I thought you were blind?" Damian tilted his head slightly. "Yeah, everyone thinks that." He stepped into the dim light spilling from the chandelier above. Rain battered the windows behind him, creating shifting patterns across his face. Dark stubble covered his jaw. A fresh scar cut through his left eyebrow. He looked like violence wrapped in expensive fabric. "You're the one who found the rat poison in my tea last Tuesday," Damien said. It wasn't a question. Rosalie's pulse hammered. She'd been cleaning the kitchen late that night when she noticed the head housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, stirring something into the porcelain teacup prepared for the boss's nightly routine. The powder had dissolved too quickly, too completely. Rosalie had switched the cups when no one was looking and spent the next 3 hours terrified she'd just signed her own death warrant. "I don't know what you're talking about," Rosalie said carefully. Damien's expression didn't change. "You switched the cups. Mrs. Chen drank her own poison and spent the next 2 days vomiting blood in the servants' quarters. The staff thinks she caught a stomach bug." He took another step closer. "But you knew better." Rosalie stood slowly, knees aching. The bleach bottle hung loose in her left hand. She was acutely aware that she was alone with a man who'd reportedly killed 17 people before his 30th birthday. A man everyone believed was helpless. A man who very clearly was not. "Why didn't you run?" Damien asked. "Where would I go?" Rosalie shot back before she could stop herself. Something flickered in his eyes. Not anger. Something worse. Recognition. "You're drowning in debt," Damien said. "Medical bills for your mother, rheumatoid arthritis, stage 3. The treatments cost $4,000 a month, and insurance won't cover half of it. You work double shifts here and weekend nights at a diner in Astoria just to keep the lights on." He paused. "You can't afford to run. You can barely afford to breathe." Rosalie's fingers tightened around the bleach bottle. "You investigating your housemaids now?" "I investigate everyone." Damien moved closer until only 5 feet separated them. "Especially the ones who saved my life." The words landed like stones in still water. "I didn't save anything," Rosalie said quietly. "I just didn't want to scrub blood out of marble again. This stuff stains." Damien's mouth curved, not quite a smile, but close. "You're a terrible liar, Rosalie Mercer." Hearing her full name from his mouth sent ice down her spine. He knew everything. Of course he did. Men like Damien Moretti didn't survive by trusting anyone, least of all the invisible people cleaning their houses. "What do you want?" Rosalie asked. "Honest question." Damien crossed his arms. "How many people in this house do you think are trying to kill me?" Rosalie blinked. "Excuse me?" "Honest answer," Damien repeated. "You see everything. You hear everything. No one pays attention to the fat girl hauling laundry." His tone was clinical, factual, completely devoid of cruelty. "So tell me, how many?" Rosalie's jaw tightened. She'd spent her entire life being dismissed because of her weight, reduced to punchlines and pitying looks. But Damien wasn't mocking her. He was stating a tactical advantage. She hated that it was true. "Most of them," Rosalie said finally. "Most?" "The bodyguards are stealing from you. The kitchen staff waters down your liquor and sells the good bottles. Marcus Vale meets with men in expensive suits every Thursday at 2 a.m. in the library." Rosalie's voice stayed steady, even as her heart raced. "And Mrs. Chen wasn't the only one putting things in your food." Damien's expression went cold. "Who else?" "Your driver, Anton. He's been grinding sedatives into your morning coffee for the past week." For 3 seconds, the only sound was rain against glass. Then Damien smiled. It was the most terrifying thing Rosalie had ever seen. "Good," he said softly. "That's very good." "Good?" Rosalie stared at him. "You're getting drugged and robbed by your own people and you think that's good?" "I think," Damien said slowly, "that traitors are easier to handle when they're confident. Confident people get sloppy." He stepped closer. "And you just gave me names." Rosalie's back hit the wall behind her. She hadn't realized she'd been retreating. Damien stopped just close enough that she could smell gunpowder and expensive cologne. "I'm going to make you an offer, Rosalie. You can say no. I won't kill you for it. I won't fire you. But I need to know if you're smart enough to say yes." "What offer?" "Work for me. Really work for me. Not scrubbing floors and dodging poison. I need eyes in this house. Someone people ignore. Someone they talk around like furniture." His gray eyes locked onto hers. "Someone honest." "You don't know me," Rosalie said. "I know you switched those cups even though it put a target on your back. I know you're still here even though you could have run the second Mrs. Chen started bleeding. I know you didn't ask for money or protection or a favor." Damien's voice dropped. You're either the dumbest person alive or the most loyal, and I don't hire dumb people. Rosalie's hands shook. What happens if I say no? Nothing. You keep cleaning. I keep pretending to be blind. And in 3 weeks, when Marcus and his Russian friends put a bullet in my head, you'll be out of a job. He paused. And your mother will be out of treatment. The threat wasn't subtle. It didn't need to be. If I say yes? Rosalie whispered. Your mother's medical bills disappear. You get paid 10 times what you're making now, and you help me burn every traitor in this house to the ground. Damien leaned closer. But you don't get to stay invisible anymore, Rosalie. You're either all in, or you're a liability I can't afford. Rosalie's mind raced. She thought about her mother's trembling hands, the past due notices stacked on the kitchen counter, the humiliation of scrubbing toilets while people laughed behind her back. She thought about the sand standing in front of her, a wounded king playing dead while his empire rotted. And she thought about the fact that for the first time in 8 months, someone was looking directly at her instead of through her. What do you need me to do? Rosalie asked. Damien's smile returned. Tell me everything you know about Marcus Vale. 40 minutes later, Rosalie sat in Damien's private study surrounded by enough surveillance equipment to run a small intelligence agency. Monitors lined one wall showing grainy footage from hidden cameras throughout the estate. A mahogany desk dominated the center of the room, its surface covered in encrypted phones, financial ledgers, and a disassembled Glock 19. Damien sat behind the desk, reassembling the weapon with practiced ease. He'd abandoned the dark glasses entirely. Without them, he looked younger. Maybe 35, maybe 40. Hard to tell when violence aged you faster than time. Marcus meets with the same 3 men every Thursday, Rosalie said, perched on the edge of a leather chair. They speak Russian. I don't understand the language, but I recognize the accent. Damien slid the Glock's magazine into place with a metallic click. Describe them. Expensive suits, Eastern European features. The tall one has a tattoo on his neck, stars, I think. Military, maybe. Bratva, Damien said. Russian Mafia. The stars mean he's high-ranking, made man. He set the weapon aside. Marcus has been selling me out to the Volkov syndicate. Rosalie's stomach turned. How long have you known? 3 weeks. Since the night they shot me outside Russo's restaurant. Damien's voice was flat, clinical. I knew someone inside gave them my schedule, my route, the exact moment I'd be vulnerable. He gestured toward his chest where bandages still wrapped around healing bullet wounds. I survived because I wore a vest. But they don't know that. They think they hit me clean. So you faked the blindness, Rosalie said slowly. Staged it. Paid the hospital staff to lie. Came home looking half dead so everyone would think I was finished. Damien leaned back in his chair. Dead kings can't defend themselves. But dying kings? Everyone wants a piece. And you've been watching them. Every second, Damien nodded toward the monitors. Cameras in every room. Audio feeds in the hallways. I know who's stealing, who's lying, who's planning to put me in the ground. His gray eyes hardened. But I needed confirmation about Marcus. He's careful, never uses phones I can trace, never meets the Russians on property I control. Except Thursdays, Rosalie said. Except Thursdays. Damien pulled up footage on one of the monitors, grainy video of Marcus standing in the estate's library with 3 men in dark suits. The timestamp read 2:13 a.m. This was last week, but the audio's garbage. Too much interference. Rosalie studied the screen. You need someone in the room. Can't be me. Can't be anyone Marcus would notice. Damien looked at her. But you're invisible. You could be cleaning that library at 2 a.m. and no one would question it. Rosalie's pulse quickened. You want me to spy on him. I want you to confirm what he's planning. Dates, targets, how many men he's bringing. Damien's expression didn't change. And I want you to find out who else is helping him. What happens when you have that information? I kill everyone involved. Damien said it the same way someone might say, I'll grab coffee. No trials, no speeches, just bodies. Rosalie should have been horrified, should have run, should have called the cops and begged for witness protection. But she'd grown up in Queens watching her father get killed by men in expensive suits who never faced justice. She'd watched her mother's hands shake from arthritis. No insurance would cover while pharmaceutical companies posted record profits. She'd spent 8 months being treated like garbage by people who stole from a wounded man and called it ambition. Sometimes the system didn't work. Sometimes the only justice you got was the kind you took yourself. "When's the next meeting?" Rosalie asked. Damien's smile could have cut glass. "Thursday, 2 a.m. Be in that library cleaning the bookshelves. Wear an earpiece. I'll walk you through the whole thing." "What if they catch me?" "They won't." Damien stood, moving around the desk until he stood directly in front of her. "Because you're good at being invisible. And because I'll be watching every second." He extended his hand. "Do we have a deal?" Rosalie stared at his hand, calloused, scarred, deadly. She shook it. "We have a deal." The next 72 hours blurred together in a haze of double shifts and mounting paranoia. Rosalie scrubbed floors, hauled laundry, and served meals while mentally cataloging everything she saw. The bodyguard who pocketed sterling silver candlesticks, the chef who skimmed cash from the grocery budget, the driver who cut Damien's morning coffee with ground sedatives. Everyone was guilty of something. Wednesday night, Damien called her back to the study. "Tomorrow's the meeting," he said without preamble. "Marcus confirmed it an hour ago. 3 Russians. Same ones from last week." Rosalie's hands trembled. "What do I need to do?" Damien handed her a flesh-colored earpiece the size of a grain of rice. "This goes in your left ear. It's audio only. You can hear me. I can hear you. Don't talk unless you're alone. The library has 2 exits. North door leads to the servants' hallway. South door leads to the main foyer." He pointed to a blueprint spread across the desk. "You'll enter through the north, clean the shelves on the east wall. Stay quiet. Listen. Memorize everything. What if they speak Russian? I've got a translator standing by. Just make sure the earpiece picks up the conversation." Damien's expression softened slightly. "You scared?" "Terrified," Rosalie admitted. "Good. Fear keeps you sharp." He pulled a small black case from his desk drawer. Inside was a snub-nosed revolver. "Can you shoot?" Rosalie stared at the weapon. "No. Learn fast." Damien lifted the revolver, checked the cylinder, then handed it to her grip first. "Safety's here. Point, squeeze, repeat. 5 shots. You won't need more than 2. The gun felt impossibly heavy in her hands. "I thought you said they wouldn't catch me." "They won't. But I don't leave my people defenseless." Damien closed her fingers around the grip. "Keep it in your apron pocket. If someone pulls a weapon on you, you shoot them in the chest. Center mass. Don't aim for the head. You'll miss. Don't try to wound. You'll die." His gray eyes bored into hers. "You understand?" Rosalie nodded, throat tight. "Say it." "Center mass," she whispered. "I understand." "Good." Damien released her hand. "Go home. Get some sleep. Be back here tomorrow at 1:45 a.m. Rosalie stood on shaking legs, the revolver a cold weight in her pocket. She made it to the study door before Damien's voice stopped her. "Rosalie." She turned. "You're doing the right thing," he said quietly. "I know it doesn't feel like it, but you are." Rosalie wanted to believe him. She really did. Tmas. Thursday arrived wrapped in fog and dread. Rosalie moved through her shift like a ghost, scrubbing surfaces and folding linens while her mind raced through every possible disaster. By 1:30 a.m., the estate had gone quiet. Staff had retreated to their quarters. Security rotations had thinned to skeleton crews. The house felt like a tomb waiting for bodies. Rosalie slipped into the servants' bathroom and locked the door. Her reflection stared back from the mirror. Dark circles under her eyes, exhaustion carved into every line of her face. She looked like hell. She inserted the earpiece, wincing as it settled deep in her ear canal. "Testing." Damien's voice whispered directly into her brain. "Can you hear me?" Rosalie tapped her ear twice. The signal for yes. "Good. Proceed to the library. Move slow. Act natural. I've got eyes on you." Rosalie grabbed a feather duster and a bottle of furniture polish from the cleaning cart. The revolver sat heavy in her apron pocket, a secret weight pressing against her hip. She stepped into the hallway. The north corridor stretched before her like a throat lined with portraits of dead Morettis. Her footsteps echoed on marble. Every shadow seemed to move. "Steady," Damien's voice murmured. "You're doing fine." The library doors loomed ahead, 12 feet of carved mahogany inlaid with gold leaf. Rosalie pushed through into a cathedral of books. Floor-to-ceiling shelves lined every wall. A massive fireplace dominated the west side, embers still glowing from an earlier fire. Leather chairs clustered near the hearth like conspirators. The room was empty. "Early," Damien said. "Good. Start dusting the east wall. Make it look real." Rosalie moved to the shelves and began wiping down leather spines. Her hand shook so badly she nearly dropped the duster. She forced herself to breathe. 1:58 a.m. The south door opened. Marcus Vale entered first, followed by 3 men in expensive dark suits. The tall one had stars tattooed on his neck, exactly as Rosalie had described. They moved with the fluid confidence of apex predators. "Gentlemen," Marcus said, gesturing toward the chairs, "please, sit." They spoke English, thank God. Rosalie kept dusting, eyes down, body language screaming invisible. She was furniture, wallpaper, nothing. The tall Russian settled into a chair, legs spread like he owned the room. "Your boss still playing blind?" "Completely," Marcus said smoothly. "The doctors confirmed permanent optic nerve damage. He can't see 6 inches in front of his face." A lie. But the Russians believed it. "Good," the Russian said. His accent was thick but clear. "Makes next week easier." Next week. Rosalie's heart hammered. She moved to a lower shelf, feather duster trembling. "Timeline hasn't changed," Marcus continued. "Tuesday night, 3 a.m. I'll disable the security system and unlock the east entrance. You'll have 15 minutes before the backup generators kick in." 15 minutes is enough. The Russian smiled. "We bring 6 men, suppressed weapons, in and out before sunrise." "And payment?" Marcus asked. "Half now. Half when Moretti's dead." The Russian pulled a folded envelope from his jacket. 5 million, as promised. Marcus took the envelope, checked the contents, and nodded. "Pleasure doing business." Rosalie's vision blurred. Tuesday, 3 a.m. 6 armed men. Damien would be slaughtered in his own home. "Rosalie!" Damien's voice cut through her panic. "Stay calm. Keep cleaning. I've got everything I need." But Rosalie barely heard him, because the Russian was staring directly at her. "Who is she?" he asked. Marcus barely glanced over. "Housemaid. Harmless." "She is listening." "She's deaf," Marcus lied smoothly. "And stupid. Aren't you, Rosie?" Every eye in the room turned toward her. Rosalie's hand drifted toward her apron pocket, toward the revolver. Her fingers brushed cold steel. "Rosalie, don't!" Damien's voice was sharp. "Do not pull that weapon. Nod and smile. That's an order." Rosalie forced her face into a vapid smile and nodded enthusiastically. She pointed to her ears and shook her head. "Can't hear you." The Russian studied her for 5 eternal seconds. Then he shrugged. "She's fat and stupid, not a threat." Marcus laughed. "Exactly. Now, about the exit strategy." They resumed talking. Rosalie resumed dusting, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. 20 minutes later, the meeting ended. The Russians left through the south door. Marcus lingered, pouring himself bourbon from a crystal decanter near the fireplace. He stared into the dying embers, expression unreadable. Rosalie kept cleaning, waiting for permission to run. "You can go," Marcus said without turning around. Rosalie grabbed her supplies and fled. She made it to the servants' hallway before her legs gave out. She collapsed against the wall, gasping, the revolver still clutched in her trembling hand. "You did perfectly," Damien's voice said. "Come to the study. Now." Rosalie forced herself upright and stumbled through the darkened corridors. Her heart refused to slow. Her hands refused to steady. She'd just helped plan a man's murder. No, she'd just helped prevent one. The distinction felt razor thin. Damien stood waiting in the study doorway. The moment Rosalie stepped inside, he took the revolver from her shaking hands and guided her into a chair. "Breathe," he said quietly. "In through your nose, out through your mouth. Focus." Rosalie obeyed. Slowly the world stopped spinning. "You got everything?" she whispered. "Every word, recorded, time-stamped, translated." Damien knelt in front of her chair so they were eye level. You just saved my life, Rosalie Mercer. They're going to kill you Tuesday. They're going to try. Damien's smile was cold steel. But now I know when, where, and how many. Which means Tuesday night, Marcus and his Russian friends are going to walk into the last mistake they'll ever make. Rosalie met his eyes. What are you going to do? What I should have done 3 weeks ago. Damien stood. I'm going to remind everyone why they used to fear the Moretti name. Somewhere outside, thunder rolled across the New York skyline. And in the silence that followed, Rosalie realized she'd just chosen a side in a war she didn't fully understand. But looking at the man in front of her, scarred, wounded, utterly unbreakable, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She wasn't invisible anymore. And there was no going back. Friday morning arrived dressed in gray light and the metallic taste of fear. Rosalie hadn't slept. She'd spent the hours between 4 a.m. and dawn staring at her apartment ceiling, replaying every second of the library meeting until the words blurred into white noise. Tuesday, 3 a.m. 6 men with suppressed weapons. Marcus's smooth voice promising death like it was a business transaction. Her phone buzzed at 6:15 a.m. Unknown number. Single message. Be at the estate by 8. We have work to do. D. Rosalie dragged herself into the shower and let scalding water beat against her shoulders until her skin turned red. She dressed in her usual uniform. Black slacks, white button-down, sensible shoes that wouldn't echo on marble. The revolver sat on her nightstand where she'd placed it after returning home. She stared at it for a full minute before sliding it into her bag. The subway ride to the estate felt surreal. Normal people heading to normal jobs, clutching coffee cups and staring at phones, completely unaware that the woman standing beside them had just helped plan a counter-ambush that would probably end with bodies stacked in a mansion foyer. Rosalie exited at Lexington Avenue and walked the remaining 6 blocks through neighborhoods that transformed from working-class brown to obscene wealth white. The Moretti estate loomed behind iron gates and manicured hedges, all glass and stone and old money violence. Security waved her through without a second glance. Inside, the house moved with its usual morning rhythm. Kitchen staff prepared breakfast. Housekeepers dusted surfaces already spotless. Everything looked normal. But Rosalie could feel the rot underneath. She found Damien in his study, exactly where she'd left him hours earlier. He stood before the wall of monitors wearing fresh clothes, black slacks, gray sweater, no glasses. He looked almost human except for the gun disassembled on his desk and the surveillance footage playing on repeat behind him. Coffee? He asked without turning around. I don't drink it. Smart. Anton's still putting sedatives in the pot. Damien finally looked at her. His gray eyes traced her face with clinical precision. You didn't sleep. Neither did you. I don't sleep much anymore. Survival instinct. He gestured toward the monitors. I've been watching the overnight footage. Marcus left the estate at 4:47 a.m., drove to a warehouse in Red Hook, met with the same Russians for another 20 minutes. Rosalie moved closer to the screens. Grainy footage showed Marcus's Mercedes pulling into a dilapidated industrial building. You have cameras there too? I have cameras everywhere. Damien pulled up another feed. Interior warehouse footage showing Marcus handing over building schematics to the tall Russian. He's giving them blueprints of the estate, showing them the panic room location, the safe room exits, where I sleep. They're planning for resistance. They're planning for war. Damien froze the image on Marcus's face, but they're making one critical mistake. What? They think I'm helpless. Damien's voice was ice. They think the blind king can't fight back, so they're not being careful, they're being arrogant. Rosalie studied the frozen image of Marcus, his confident posture, his easy smile, the way he moved through the warehouse like he owned it. How long have you known him? 15 years since we were both kids running numbers for my father. Damien's expression went distant. Marcus saved my life twice. Once when I was 23 and some Irish crew tried to put me in the ground. Once when I was 28 and my own cousin tried to poison me at a wedding. He paused. I trusted him with everything. And now? Now I'm going to put a bullet between his eyes. Damien said it with the same tone someone might use to discuss grocery shopping. But not yet. I need to know who else is involved, how deep the rot goes. Rosalie's stomach churned. You think there are more traitors? I know there are. Damien switched feeds, showing footage from different parts of the estate. Watch. The first clip showed two bodyguards, Victor and Chen, huddled in the garage, speaking in low voices. Chen passed Victor a thick envelope. Victor counted cash and nodded. They're not just stealing, Damien said. They're being paid. Someone's funding the theft. Next clip. The head chef meeting with a well-dressed man in the servant's entrance. Money changed hands again. Same pattern, Damien continued. Someone's buying loyalty, paying staff to undermine me, steal from me, make me look weak. Marcus, Rosalie said. Probably, but I need proof. Damien's jaw tightened. And I need to know who's still loyal, who I can trust when Tuesday comes. You trust me. Damien looked at her for a long moment. You switched poisoned teacups when you had nothing to gain and everything to lose. You walked into a room full of killers with a gun you didn't know how to use because I asked you to. His voice softened slightly. Yeah, I trust you. The words landed heavier than Rosalie expected. What do you need me to do? She asked. Same thing you've been doing. Listen, watch, report everything. Damien pulled a folder from his desk and handed it to her. Inside were photographs and dossiers on every staff member in the estate. I've marked the ones I'm certain are compromised. I need you to confirm the others. Rosalie flipped through the pages. Red X marks covered at least a third of the faces. That's a lot of people. That's an empire rotting from the inside. Damien closed the folder. By Monday night, I need a complete list. Everyone who's loyal, everyone who's not. No mistakes. And Tuesday? Tuesday, we burn it all down. Good kids. The next 48 hours transformed Rosalie into something between spy and janitor. She moved through the estate like smoke, invisible and everywhere at once. She scrubbed floors while listening to bodyguards complain about unpaid overtime. She folded laundry while kitchen staff gossiped about the boss's failing health. She served meals while Marcus held court in the dining room, spinning elaborate stories about taking over operations until Damien recovers. Everyone believed the lie. Everyone except the man watching from the shadows. Saturday afternoon, Rosalie was polishing silver in the butler's pantry when she overheard Victor and Chen talking in the adjacent hallway. Tuesday night, Victor said, voice low. Marcus says we clear out by 2:30 a.m., be off the property before it goes down. And the payout? Chen asked. 50 grand each? Cash? No taxes? No trace? Victor laughed. Easiest money we'll ever make. What about the others, the housekeepers, the kitchen staff? Marcus says they're collateral, not our problem. Rosalie's hands went still. Collateral. They were planning to let innocent people die. She finished the silver in silence, then retreated to the servants' bathroom and locked herself in a stall. Her hands shook as she pulled out the burner phone Damien had given her. She typed, Victor and Chen confirmed, paid to leave before the hit, mentioned other staff as collateral damage. The response came in seconds. Good work. Stay alert. Rosalie deleted the messages and flushed the evidence of her shaking hands down the toilet. Sunday brought a different kind of tension. The estate filled with visitors, business associates, distant relatives, hangers-on drawn to power like flies to carrion. They gathered in the main parlor, drinking expensive wine and speaking in hushed tones about poor Damien and such a tragedy, and who will take over the family business. Rosalie served canapes and pretended not to notice how everyone spoke about Damien like he was already dead. Marcus presided over the gathering like a king in waiting. He wore an immaculate navy suit and moved through the crowd with practiced charm, clasping shoulders and making promises about stability and honoring Damien's legacy. It made Rosalie's skin crawl. She was refilling champagne glasses when she felt eyes on her back. She turned to find Marcus watching her from across the room. He smiled, warm, friendly, completely fake. He crooked a finger, beckoning her over. Rosalie's pulse spiked, but she crossed the parlor with her tray balanced and her expression neutral. Rosalie, Marcus said pleasantly, you've been working so hard lately. How are you holding up? Fine, Mr. Vale. Thank you for asking. Good, good. He selected a glass of champagne from her tray, his fingers brushing hers deliberately. You know, I've been meaning to speak with you about your future here. Rosalie's throat went dry. My future? Things are going to change soon. New management, new priorities. Marcus sipped his champagne, eyes never leaving hers. I want to make sure valuable employees are taken care of, people I can trust. The word trust felt like a blade pressed against her ribs. I appreciate that, Mr. Vale. Do you? Marcus tilted his head. Because I've noticed you spending a lot of time in certain parts of the house, near Damien's study, late at night. Rosalie's mind raced. Had he seen her? Did he know? I clean the study every night, she said carefully. Part of my rotation. Of course. Of course. Marcus's smile didn't waver. I'm just saying, Rosalie, loyalty matters. Especially now, you understand? I understand. Good girl. He patted her shoulder like she was a dog. Keep up the excellent work. Rosalie returned to the kitchen on legs that barely functioned. She set down the tray before her trembling hands could drop it and leaned against the counter, breathing hard. Marcus suspected something. Maybe not everything, but enough to be dangerous. She needed to tell Damien. Geek. That night, Rosalie waited until 2 a.m. before sneaking to the study. The house was dark and still. She moved through corridors she'd memorized, avoiding security cameras she'd mapped out over the past week. Damien was waiting. Marcus cornered you today, he said before she could speak. I saw it on the feeds. He's suspicious. I know. Damien gestured to a monitor showing replayed footage of their conversation in the parlor. He's been watching you, following your movements. He knows you're different from the other staff. Rosalie's hands clenched. Does he know I'm working for you? If he knew that, you'd already be dead. Damien's voice was cold comfort. But he's smart enough to be cautious, which means we need to be smarter. How? Damien pulled a small vial from his desk drawer. It's clear liquid, unmarked. Tomorrow morning, you're going to put 3 drops of this in Marcus's coffee. Rosalie stared at the vial. What is it? Mild sedative. Nothing dangerous. He'll feel slightly off. Foggy, slow reactions, mild paranoia. It'll look like stress, like the pressure of the upcoming takeover is getting to him. Damien's gray eyes locked onto hers. It'll make him question himself. Second guess? Maybe make a mistake. You want me to drug him? I want you to level the playing field. Damien set the vial in her palm and closed her fingers around it. Marcus has 6 trained killers coming Tuesday. I have a blind act and a housemaid with a revolver she can't shoot. We need every advantage we can create. Rosalie looked at the vial. Such a small thing, such a massive line to cross. What if I get caught? You won't. You've been invisible for 8 months. Be invisible for 1 more day. Damien's voice softened. I wouldn't ask if there was another way. Rosalie thought about Victor and Chen talking about collateral damage, about Marcus selling out the man who'd trusted him for 15 years, about her mother's medical bills and the debt that never stopped growing. She thought about the fact that she'd already crossed so many lines. 1 more didn't seem to matter. 3 drops, she said quietly. 3 drops. No more. Rosalie pocketed the vial and turned to leave. Rosalie. She stopped. After Tuesday, Damien said, your life will never be the same. You understand that, right? There's no going back to being invisible. No pretending this didn't happen. Rosalie looked back at him. This wounded king sitting in the dark, surrounded by screens showing his empire's betrayal. I stopped being invisible the day I switched those teacups, she said. I've just been pretending I had a choice. Damien's expression shifted into something that might have been respect, or recognition, or both. Get some sleep, he said. Rosalie left before she could change her mind. Monday morning tasted like copper and bad decisions. Rosalie prepared Marcus's coffee with hands that refused to stay steady. The vial sat hidden in her apron pocket, 3 drops away from a felony she couldn't take back. The kitchen bustled with breakfast prep. Chef Antoine barked orders at line cooks. Servers rushed between stations. No one paid attention to the housemaid pouring coffee for the consigliere. Rosalie glanced at the security camera in the corner, the one she knew was disabled because Damien had told her so. She pulled the vial from her pocket, unscrewed the cap with trembling fingers, and counted. 1 drop, 2 drops, 3. The liquid disappeared into the black coffee without a trace. Rosalie screwed the cap back on, pocketed the vial, and picked up the tray. Her reflection caught in the polished coffee pot. Pale face, dark circles, the look of someone who'd stopped sleeping because sleep felt like weakness. She carried the tray to Marcus's office on the second floor. He sat behind a massive oak desk reviewing documents, phone pressed to his ear. He glanced up as Rosalie entered and gestured for her to set the coffee down. Tuesday, 3 a.m., he was saying. 6 men, suppressed weapons, in and out before dawn. Yeah, I'll make sure the east entrance is unlocked. He paused. No, he suspects nothing. The blind bastard can't even find the bathroom without help. Rosalie set the coffee on his desk and turned to leave. Marcus covered the phone. Rosalie. Wait. She froze. I wanted to apologize for yesterday. I came on too strong. His smile was practiced. Perfect. You're doing excellent work. I appreciate your discretion. Of course, Mr. Vale. Good. He lifted the coffee cup. Thank you for this. Rosalie nodded and walked out of the office, her heart trying to break through her ribs. She made it to the servants' stairwell before her legs gave out. She sat on the cold concrete steps and buried her face in her hands, breathing hard. She'd just drugged a man. She'd just become an accomplice to whatever Damien was planning. There was no going back now. What? By Monday afternoon, the sedative was working. Rosalie watched from the edges of rooms as Marcus moved through the estate with slightly slower reactions, his usual sharp focus dulled around the edges. He snapped at staff for minor mistakes. He rechecked locked doors twice. He stared at security feeds with narrowed eyes, looking for threats that weren't there yet. Paranoia blooming from 3 drops in a coffee cup. Damien's voice crackled through the earpiece Rosalie now wore constantly. Perfect. Keep your distance. Let the drug do its work. But Monday night brought complications. Rosalie was cleaning the second-floor hallway when she heard shouting from Damien's bedroom. She dropped her mop and ran toward the sound, instinct overriding caution. The bedroom door stood open. Inside, Marcus stood over Damien's bed where the crime lord lay in pajamas and dark glasses, the picture of helpless invalidity. You've been playing me, Marcus snarled. Haven't you? Rosalie's hand went to the revolver in her apron. I don't know what you're talking about, Damien said, his voice weak and confused. The perfect act. Someone's been watching me, following me. I can feel it. Marcus paced, agitated. Someone disabled the camera in the kitchen this morning. Someone's been in my office going through my files. Damien sat up slowly, fumbling for his cane. Marcus, you're not making sense. Don't. Marcus grabbed Damien by the collar and yanked him upright. Don't lie to me. Not after 15 years. Rosalie stepped into the doorway, revolver half drawn. Damien's eyes, hidden behind dark glasses, somehow found her anyway. A tiny shake of his head. Not yet. Marcus. Damien's voice dropped into something cold and dangerous despite the helpless act. Let go of me. Or what? Marcus shoved him back against the headboard. You going to stop me, blind man? You going to... He stopped mid-sentence. His eyes went to Damien's face, to the dark glasses that had shifted during the struggle, to the gray eyes visible beneath them, eyes that were focused, alert, absolutely not blind. The room went silent. Marcus released Damien and stepped back, hand moving toward the gun holstered beneath his jacket. You can see, Marcus whispered. Yeah, Damien said quietly, pulling off the glasses entirely. I can see. Marcus's hand closed around his weapon. Rosalie raised her revolver with both hands, finger on the trigger exactly as Damien had taught her. Don't. Marcus froze, gun halfway out of its holster. He looked between Damien and Rosalie, calculation replacing shock in his eyes. The housemaid, he said slowly. You've been using the fat housemaid as a spy. Her name is Rosalie, Damien said. And yeah, she's been watching you betray me for a week straight. Marcus's jaw tightened. You don't understand what you've done. I understand perfectly. You sold me out to the Volkov syndicate. You're bringing 6 men here Tuesday to put me in the ground. You've been stealing from me, lying to me, and buying loyalty from my own staff. Damien stood, moving with the fluid confidence of a man who'd never been injured. What I don't understand is why. Why? Marcus laughed bitterly. You really have to ask? 15 years, Damien. 15 years I've stood beside you while you played king, while you took all the glory and I cleaned up all your messes. You know what I got for my loyalty? A salary, a pat on the back, scraps from your table. I gave you everything, Damien said quietly. You gave me nothing. Marcus's composure cracked. Your father promised me a partnership, equal shares, equal power. But then he died and you took over, and suddenly I was just the consigliere again. Just the help. Just another employee in your empire. So you decided to kill me. I decided to take what should have been mine from the start. Marcus pulled his gun free entirely, leveling it at Damien. And I still can. Rosalie's finger tightened on the trigger. I will shoot you. No, you won't. Marcus didn't even look at her. You're a scared housemaid playing dress-up with a gun you don't know how to use. You won't. The revolver's blast was deafening in the enclosed bedroom. Marcus's shoulder exploded in red mist. He stumbled backward, gun clattering from his hand, shock replacing arrogance on his face. Rosalie stood frozen, weapon still raised, smoke curling from the barrel. Her ears rang. Her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped the gun. She'd shot him. She'd actually shot him. Damien moved fast, crossing the room in 3 strides, kicking Marcus's weapon away, pressing his own gun against the wounded man's temple. Security will be here in 30 seconds, Damien said calmly. Half of them work for you. So here's how this plays. You call off Tuesday's hit. You tell the Russians the deal is off. You disappear and never come back to New York. Marcus clutched his bleeding shoulder, teeth bared in pain and fury. Or what? Or I kill everyone you love. Your sister in Boston, your nephew in Chicago, your mother in that nursing home in Connecticut. Damien's voice was ice. And then I kill you slow. Make it last for days. Marcus's face went pale. Call them, Damien ordered. Now. Footsteps pounded in the hallway, security responding to the gunshot. Marcus reached for his phone with his good hand, fingers trembling. He dialed, waited. It's me. The deal's off. Tuesday's canceled. Don't ask questions, just... The bedroom door burst open. Victor and Chen rushed in, weapons drawn, taking in the scene. Marcus bleeding, Damien armed, Rosalie holding a smoking revolver. Boss? Victor looked between them, confused. Which boss? Damien asked quietly. The blind one everyone's been stealing from? Or the one who's been paying you to betray me? Victor's weapon drifted toward Damien. Chen's followed. And Rosalie realized with horrifying clarity that they'd just entered a situation where everyone had guns and no one had good options. Easy, Marcus said, still clutching his phone and his bleeding shoulder. Everyone stay calm. We can work this out. Work what out? Victor demanded. What the hell is happening? Mr. Moretti isn't blind, Rosalie heard herself say, and Mr. Vale has been planning to kill him. You're all part of it. Victor's eyes went wide. What? She's lying, Marcus said quickly. She's been... I have video, Damien interrupted, of every meeting, every payment, every word. His gun never wavered from Marcus's head. Thursday night in the library, you and 3 Russians planning my execution. You want to see the footage? Chen's weapon lowered slightly. Boss, what's he talking about? It's complicated, Marcus started. It's treason, Damien finished. And you're all accomplices. Which means you've got one choice right now. Whose side are you on? The room balanced on a razor's edge. Victor looked at Chen. Chen looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at Damien. And Rosalie kept her revolver raised even though her arms felt like dead weight, and she could barely breathe through the adrenaline turning her blood to fire. Put the guns down, Damien said quietly. All of you. We're going to walk down to my study. We're going to watch the surveillance footage. And then everyone's going to make a choice about how they want this night to end. And if we don't? Victor asked. Then Rosalie shoots you, Damien said. She's already pulled the trigger once tonight. Second time's easier. Rosalie's hands shook so badly she could barely hold the weapon, but she didn't lower it. Victor and Chen exchanged a glance. Then, slowly, they lowered their weapons. Good, Damien said. Now move. They descended to the study in a tense procession, Damien leading with his gun on Marcus, Rosalie behind with her revolver on Victor and Chen, security guards flanking with weapons reluctantly holstered. The house was silent. Whatever staff were still awake knew better than to investigate gunfire in the Moretti estate. The study door closed behind them with a sound like a coffin ceiling. Damien gestured toward the monitors. Watch. He played the library footage. All of it. Marcus meeting with Russians. Payment envelopes changing hands. Blueprints of the estate spread across tables. Discussions of timeline, method, collateral damage. By the time the video ended, Victor looked sick. Chen was staring at Marcus like he'd never seen him before. "You were going to let us die," Chen said quietly. "All of us. Just collateral." "I was going to make you rich," Marcus shot back, still holding his bleeding shoulder. 50 grand each. You think Damien pays you that much?" "Damien doesn't pay us to commit murder," Victor said. "Damien has you commit murder every other month," Marcus snarled. "Don't act like you're suddenly developing a conscience." "There's a difference between business and betrayal," Damien said coldly. "I've never lied about what we do. I've never pretended to be your friend while planning to put you in the ground." He looked at Victor and Chen. "How much did he pay you?" Silence. "Answer me." 10 grand, Victor muttered. "Each, to clear out Tuesday night, to leave the east entrance unlocked." "And the others? The kitchen staff? The housekeepers?" He said they'd be fine, that the Russians would avoid civilians. He lied. Damien pulled up another video, the warehouse meeting from Red Hook. Audio played. Russian voices discussing casualties, acceptable losses, making sure there were no witnesses. Chen's face went white. "They were going to kill everyone," Rosalie said quietly. "Anyone who could identify them. Anyone who'd seen them enter the estate." "Jesus," Victor whispered. Marcus tried one last play. "You don't understand the pressure I've been under. The Volkovs threatened my family. I didn't have a choice." "You had a choice," Damien said. "You could have come to me, told me the truth, asked for help." His gray eyes burned cold. "Instead, you chose betrayal. You chose to let innocent people die. You chose to destroy everything my father built." "Your father would have done the same thing," Marcus spat. "My father," Damien said quietly, "would have put a bullet in you the second you started taking Russian money." He raised his weapon. Marcus flinched. "Wait. Boss," Victor interrupted, "let the law handle this." Damien laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "The law? Marcus has half the police force in his pocket. You think he's going to trial? You think justice is going to happen through the system?" He looked at his security guards. "You've worked for me long enough to know how this world works. There's the law, and then there's our law." "If you kill him, you're no better than he is," Chen said. "I never claimed to be better." Damien's finger moved to the trigger. "I just claimed to be loyal." Rosalie stepped forward, revolver still in her hand but pointing at the floor. "Wait." Everyone looked at her. "If you kill him now," she said quietly, "the Russians don't know the plan is off. They'll still come Tuesday. You'll still have to fight them." Damien's jaw tightened. "So? So keep him alive. Make him call off the hit properly. Make him burn the bridges with the Volkovs so they know it's over." Rosalie's voice steadied. "Then decide what happens to him." Marcus's eyes locked onto hers, desperate, calculating, searching for any crack in her resolve. "You want me to spare him?" Damien said flatly. "I want you to be smart," Rosalie countered. "Killing him now creates more problems than it solves, but letting him fix what he broke? That gives you options." The room went silent. Damien lowered his weapon slowly. "Fine," he said. "Marcus, you're going to call the Volkovs. You're going to tell them I know everything. You're going to tell them the deal is off, and if they set foot on my property, I'll start a war that makes the news for a month." He grabbed Marcus by his injured shoulder, making him gasp in pain. "And then you're going to disappear. Leave New York. Leave the country. I don't care where you go, but if I ever see your face again, I'll kill you and everyone you love. Understood?" Marcus nodded, teeth gritted. "Make the call." Marcus pulled out his phone with shaking hands and dialed. The conversation was brief, brutal, and final. When he hung up, sweat dripped down his face. "It's done," he whispered. "Good." Damien released him and turned to Victor and Chen. "You two have a choice. Stay and help me clean up this mess. Prove your loyalty, or walk out that door right now and never come back." Victor and Chen looked at each other. "We'll stay," Victor said quietly. Smart choice. Damien holstered his weapon. Get Marcus patched up and on a plane before sunrise. I don't care where. Just make him disappear. They moved to obey. Damien turned to Rosalie. You should go home. Get some sleep. But Rosalie's hands were still shaking. Her ears still rang from the gunshot. The smell of gunpowder and blood filled her lungs with every breath. I shot him, she said quietly. You saved my life, Damien corrected. I shot a man. You defended yourself. Damien stepped closer, his voice dropping. You did what you had to do, what I taught you to do. Rosalie looked at the revolver in her hand, still loaded, still deadly, still hers. I crossed a line tonight, she whispered. Yeah, Damien said. You did. And there's no going back. But you crossed it standing beside me instead of running away. That means something. Rosalie met his eyes. What does it mean? It means you're not a housemaid anymore, Damien said quietly. You're part of this family, part of this empire, part of everything that comes next. And as Victor and Chen dragged Marcus's bleeding body toward the door, as security reset and weapons were holstered and the immediate crisis passed into exhausted silence, Rosalie realized the truth with crystalline clarity. She'd stopped being invisible. She'd stopped being safe. And whatever came next, whatever violence or consequences or blood followed from tonight, she'd chosen it with her eyes wide open and a smoking gun in her hand. There was no going back. There had never been any going back. The estate went silent after Marcus disappeared into the night, bleeding and broken. Victor and Chen had loaded him into a black SUV at 4:17 a.m., his face pale with blood loss and the knowledge that exile was the only thing keeping him breathing. Damien watched from the study windows as taillights vanished through the iron gates, his expression carved from stone. Rosalie stood beside him, still holding the revolver that had ended Marcus's reign in a single gunshot. Her hands had finally stopped shaking. That should have felt like progress. Instead, it felt like something inside her had gone numb and cold. You should go home, Damien said without looking at her. I don't think I can sleep. Neither can I. He turned from the window, gray eyes studying her face with that clinical precision she'd come to recognize. But you need to try. Tomorrow we clean up the rest of the mess. Figure out who else was involved. Make sure the Volkovs got the message. Rosalie set the revolver on his desk. Her fingers left sweat marks on the grip. Do you think they'll come anyway? The Russians? No. Marcus burned that bridge completely. They know I'm not blind. They know their plan failed. Damien's mouth curved without humor. The Volkovs are pragmatic. They don't waste resources on lost causes. So it's over. The immediate threat is over. Damien picked up the revolver and checked the remaining rounds with automatic efficiency. But the rot goes deeper than Marcus. He didn't build this conspiracy alone. Someone funded it. Someone gave him access to resources beyond his salary. Rosalie's exhausted mind tried to process the implication. You think someone above Marcus was pulling strings? I know they were. Damien pulled up financial records on one of his monitors, spreadsheets showing wire transfers, shell companies, offshore accounts. Marcus received $3 million over the past 6 months. Payments routed through so many dummy corporations I can barely trace them. That's not Russian money. That's someone inside my organization bankrolling a coup. The words landed like stones in dark water. Who? Rosalie asked. I don't know yet. Damien's jaw tightened. But I'm going to find out. But kids. Rosalie finally went home at 5:30 a.m. as gray light began bleeding across the New York skyline. She rode the subway in a daze, surrounded by early shift workers heading to jobs that didn't involve shooting people or uncovering conspiracies. Normal people living normal lives. She wondered if she'd ever be normal again. Her apartment felt alien. Too quiet. Too small. She stood in the shower until the hot water ran cold, trying to scrub the smell of gunpowder from her skin. It didn't work. The scent had embedded itself somewhere deeper than soap could reach. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment she'd pulled the trigger. Marcus's shoulder exploding. The deafening blast. The way his arrogance had shattered into shock and pain. She'd shot a man. She'd actually shot a man. Sleep came eventually, dragging her under like an undertow. Tight. The phone woke her at 1:47 p.m. Damien's number flashing on the screen. Rosalie answered, voice rough with too little sleep. Yeah? Get to the estate, now. Damien's tone was ice and urgency. We have a problem. What kind of problem? The kind that means everyone I trusted is a liar. He hung up. Rosalie was dressed and out the door in 4 minutes. Mikey. The estate looked different in afternoon light. Less like a fortress, more like a mausoleum built to house old money and older secrets. Security waved Rosalie through without comment. Inside, the house moved with tension she could taste. Staff whispering in corners, bodyguards stationed at every entrance. The air thick with unspoken fear. She found Damien in the study surrounded by 3 men she'd never seen before. They wore dark suits and the kind of blank expressions that screamed federal agents or very expensive lawyers. Documents covered every surface. Laptops glowed with financial data. Damien looked up as she entered. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. He hadn't slept either. Rosalie? Good. He gestured toward the strangers. These are forensic accountants. They've been going through the estate's finances for the past 8 hours. One of the accountants, a thin man with wire-frame glasses, spoke without inflection. Miss Mercer, we need to ask you some questions about your employment here. Rosalie's pulse spiked. What kind of questions? When were you hired? 8 months ago, October. Who conducted your interview? Mrs. Chen, the head housekeeper. The accountant exchanged glances with his colleagues. And your salary was negotiated by? Mrs. Chen handled everything. Why? Damien's expression was stone. Because Mrs. Chen doesn't exist. The words made no sense. Rosalie stared at him. What? The woman you knew as Mrs. Chen, the head housekeeper who hired you, who tried to poison me, who supposedly died from her own poison, wasn't actually employed by this estate. Damien pulled up a personnel file on one of the monitors. Her real name is Elena Volkov. She's the cousin of Dmitry Volkov, head of the Russian syndicate that Marcus was working with. The room tilted. That's impossible, Rosalie heard herself say. She'd been working here for years. Everyone knew her. Everyone knew a woman playing a role, the accountant corrected. The real Mrs. Chen died 3 years ago in a car accident in Queens. Elena Volkov assumed her identity 6 months later and infiltrated this household specifically to destabilize Mr. Moretti's operation from the inside. Rosalie's mind raced backward through 8 months of memories. Mrs. Chen interviewing her, Mrs. Chen assigning her shifts, Mrs. Chen stirring poison into Damien's tea that Rosalie had switched, believing she was saving his life. The poison, Rosalie whispered. When I switched the cups, is... She drank it because you forced her hand, Damien said quietly. But it wasn't meant to kill me. It was a sedative, strong enough to knock me out for 24 hours while Marcus and the Russians raided the estate, but not fatal. Elena knew exactly what she was putting in that tea. Then why did she get sick? She didn't. The accountant pulled up security footage, servants' quarters, timestamp matching the night of the poisoning. The video showed Elena perfectly healthy, packing a suitcase, and leaving through a service entrance. She faked the symptoms, stayed in her room for 2 days making retching sounds while actually coordinating the final phase of the takeover. Then she vanished. Rosalie felt like she was drowning. Where is she now? Gone. Probably back in Russia by now. Damien's hands curled into fists on the desk. But here's where it gets worse. Elena didn't just hire housekeepers. She controlled all personnel decisions for non-security staff, which means everyone she hired might be a plant, Rosalie finished. Exactly. Damien gestured to the documents covering his desk. We've identified at least 7 staff members hired in the past 2 years who have connections to the Volkov syndicate. Kitchen workers, maintenance crew, even the night nurse who supposedly treated my gunshot wounds at the hospital. The paranoia in the room became a living thing. How deep does this go? Rosalie asked. We're still finding out. The accountant flipped through a ledger. But the financial trail suggests this operation has been in development for at least 4 years. Someone's been paying the Volkovs millions to systematically infiltrate and hollow out the Moretti organization from the inside. Damien's gray eyes found Rosalie's. Someone with access to my family's banking. Someone who knew exactly how to move money without triggering alerts. Who? Rosalie demanded. Before Damien could answer, the study door burst open. A woman entered, late 50s, elegant in a tailored black dress, her silver hair pulled into a severe bun. She moved with the kind of confidence that came from decades of wielding power without question. Rosalie recognized her from photographs throughout the estate. Damien's mother, Catherine Moretti. Damien! Catherine's voice could have frozen fire. We need to talk. Privately. Damien stood slowly. Mother, how kind of you to finally show up. Don't start. Catherine's eyes swept the room, taking in the accountants, the documents, Rosalie standing awkwardly by the door. I heard about Marcus, about the Russians, about your little housemaid shooting my consigliere. Former consigliere, Damien corrected. And Rosalie saved my life. Catherine's gaze landed on Rosalie like a blade. Did she? How convenient. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Everyone out, Damien said quietly. Now. The accountants gathered their laptops and fled. Rosalie moved toward the door. Not you, Damien said. You stay. Catherine's expression hardened. This is family business. Rosalie is family now. Damien's voice was steel. She's earned her place at this table. So whatever you're about to say it in front of her. Mother and son stared at each other across the desk. Two apex predators measuring killing distance. Finally, Catherine spoke. Fine. You want the truth? Here it is. I funded Marcus's operation. The confession detonated like a bomb. Rosalie's breath stopped. Damien went absolutely still. What? His voice was barely above a whisper. I gave Marcus $3 million over the past 6 months. I arranged Elena Volkov's placement as head housekeeper. I coordinated the infiltration of your staff. Catherine's tone was clinical, factual, completely devoid of remorse. I orchestrated everything. Damien's face drained of color. Why? Because you're weak. Catherine moved closer to the desk, heels clicking on marble. You've spent 5 years trying to legitimize this family, investing in real estate and tech startups and charitable foundations like we're some kind of dynasty instead of what we really are, criminals who got lucky. She leaned forward, palms flat on the desk. Your father built this empire on blood and fear. You're dismantling it with spreadsheets and PR consultants. I'm building something sustainable, Damien shot back. Something that doesn't end with federal indictments or bullets. You're building nothing, Catherine's composure cracked. You've alienated our oldest allies. You've refused profitable deals because they weren't ethical. You've turned us into a joke among the 5 families. So yes, I decided to remove you before you destroyed everything your father died protecting. Rosalie found her voice. You were going to have your own son killed. Catherine's eyes cut toward her. I was going to have him removed from power. The plan was for him to survive the attack but be too injured and traumatized to continue leading. Marcus would take over. The organization would return to its roots. Damien would live just somewhere far from New York. But the Russians were planning to kill him, Rosalie said. We heard them in the library. They were bringing 6 men with suppressed weapons. That wasn't the plan I approved, Catherine straightened, smoothing her dress. Marcus must have made his own arrangements with the Volkovs, changed the parameters without my knowledge. So you lost control of your own conspiracy, Damien said quietly, and your chosen replacement decided regicide was cleaner than exile. Catherine's jaw tightened. I underestimated Marcus's ambition. You underestimated everything. Damien stood, violence coiled in every muscle. You put Russian agents in my house. You funded a coup. You poisoned my food and drugged my coffee and smiled at me across the dinner table while planning my destruction. His voice dropped to something lethal. And you call me weak? You are weak. Catherine didn't flinch. You let this housemaid shoot Marcus instead of doing it yourself. You're keeping enemies alive when you should be burying bodies. You're playing at being civilized when civilization is a luxury criminals can't afford. Get out, Damien said. This is my house. This is my empire. Your name is on the deed, but I own every brick, every business, every dollar that flows through this family. Damien moved around the desk until he stood inches from his mother. You tried to take it from me. You failed. Now you're going to leave before I forget you're my mother and remember you're a traitor. Catherine smiled, cold and sharp as a knife. You won't kill me, Damien. You don't have the stomach for it. You're right. I won't kill you. Damien's gray eyes burned. But you're dead to this family, dead to this organization. As of right now, you own nothing, control nothing. You're a ghost. You can't. I already did. Damien gestured to the accountant's documents. While you were plotting my downfall, I was legally restructuring every asset in your name. Transferred everything to trusts you can't touch. The penthouse in Manhattan, gone. The villa in Tuscany, gone. Your bank accounts, your investments, your shares in the family businesses, all frozen or transferred. Catherine's face went white. That's theft. That's consequences. Damien stepped back. You have 24 hours to leave New York. After that, if I see you or hear from you or learn you've contacted anyone in this organization, I'll make sure the FBI gets a very detailed accounting of your involvement in money laundering, racketeering, and conspiracy to commit murder. He paused. You wanted me to be more like my father? Congratulations. You're seeing exactly what he would have done to anyone who betrayed him. Catherine's composure shattered completely. Rage and fear warred across her features. You ungrateful... 24 hours, Damien repeated, starting now. For a long moment, Catherine stood frozen. Then she turned on her heel and walked out, spine rigid with fury. The door slammed behind her. Rosalie exhaled breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She tried to have you killed. Yeah. Damien returned to his desk and collapsed into the chair like his legs had given out. My own mother funded a coup to remove me from power. What are you going to do? Exactly what I said. Cut her off, exile her, make sure she can never hurt this family again. He rubbed his face with both hands. But that still leaves us with a problem. What problem? Elena Volkov is still alive. So are the Russians who are planning to raid this estate. Marcus is alive and somewhere in the wind, and half my staff might be enemy agents. Damien looked up at her. We won the battle, Rosalie, but the war is far from over, Sam. The rest of Tuesday passed in a blur of paranoid house cleaning. Damien fired 17 staff members identified by the forensic accountants as potential Volkov plants. Security swept every room for surveillance devices and found 12 hidden cameras in bedrooms, audio bugs in the study, transmitters in the phone lines. The estate had been compromised for years. By nightfall, the house felt like a bunker. Guards patrolled every hallway. Doors were reinforced. Windows were locked tight. Damien moved through the mansion giving orders with the kind of cold efficiency that made people jump to obey. Rosalie watched him transform from wounded king to warlord in real time. She was helping catalog confiscated electronics in the study when Victor appeared in the doorway, looking pale. Boss, he said quietly, we have a situation. Damien looked up from a laptop he'd been examining. What kind? The kind with guns and Russian accents in your driveway. Ban. The monitor showed 3 black SUVs parked outside the front gates. Men in dark suits stood beside the vehicles, arms crossed, waiting. Damien counted heads. 12, maybe more inside the cars. The Volkovs, Rosalie said. Yeah. Damien pulled up the gate camera feed. The tall Russian from the library meeting stood at the front of the group, hands visible, posture non-threatening. They're here to talk. If they wanted war, they'd be shooting already. What do they want? Only one way to find out. Damien grabbed his jacket and checked the gun holstered at his back. Victor, Chen, you're with me. Rosalie, stay in the study. Monitor everything. If this goes wrong, you call the number I gave you and run. I'm not leaving you. That's an order. Damien's voice went hard. You've done enough. Let me handle this. Before Rosalie could argue, he was gone. Putty. The front gates opened with a mechanical groan. Damien walked out flanked by Victor and Chen, both armed but weapons holstered. Rosalie watched on the monitors, heart hammering, hand resting on the revolver Damien had left on his desk. The tall Russian, Dmitry Volkov, Rosalie assumed, stepped forward to meet them. They stood 10 feet apart, 2 men who'd tried to kill each other through proxies now facing off in the open. Mr. Moretti, Dmitry said. His accent was thick, but his English was clear. We need to discuss recent events. Marcus is gone, Damien said flatly. The deal is off. You got the message. Why are you here? To apologize. The word hung in the air like something impossible. Damien's expression didn't change. Apologize. Marcus Vale misrepresented your situation to us. He claimed you were incapacitated, that your organization was in chaos, that your removal would be bloodless and profitable. Dmitri spread his hands. We were lied to. For that, I apologize. You tried to kill me. We tried to acquire your territory through what we believed was a legitimate power transfer. We did not know you were still operational. We did not know Marcus was acting without proper authority. Dmitri's tone remained diplomatic. Had we known the truth, we would never have pursued this course of action. Why should I believe you? Because killing you now serves no purpose. You've removed our asset. You've secured your house. Continuing this conflict would cost both our organizations resources we cannot afford to waste. Dmitri gestured to the men behind him. We came here unarmed, in daylight, to propose a truce. Damien studied him for a long moment. What kind of truce? The Volkovs withdraw from New York entirely. We cease all operations targeting your territories. In exchange, you do not retaliate for Marcus's actions or our involvement in them. That's it? You just walk away? We walk away with our dignity intact and no war. You maintain your empire without additional bloodshed. Both sides win. Dmitri stepped closer, lowering his voice. Mr. Moretti, I have no quarrel with you personally. This was business. Bad business, as it turns out. But business nonetheless. Rosalie watched Damien's face on the monitor. He looked like he was calculating 1,000 variables simultaneously. Fine, Damien said finally. Truce. The Volkovs leave New York. I don't hunt you. We pretend this never happened. Thank you. Dmitri extended his hand. Damien shook it. The tension drained from the scene like air from a punctured tire. Rosalie slumped in the desk chair, relief flooding through her. It was over, actually over. Then Dmitri spoke again. Although there is one small complication. Damien went still. What complication? My cousin, Elena. The woman you knew as Mrs. Chen. Dmitri's expression hardened. She did not return to Russia as we instructed. In fact, we have not heard from her in 3 days. We believe she is still in New York. Why would she stay? Because Elena is not a patient woman, and she was promised money that she did not receive when the operation collapsed. Dmitri's eyes locked onto Damien's. She knows your security protocols. She knows your routines. And she is very, very good at revenge. Rosalie's blood turned to ice. You're saying she's going to come after me, Damien said quietly. I'm saying she already has. Dmitri pulled a phone from his pocket and showed Damien the screen. This photograph was taken 40 minutes ago, 2 blocks from here. Rosalie couldn't see the image on the monitors, but she watched Damien's face drain of color. Where is she now? Damien demanded. We don't know. She is off-grid, untraceable. Dmitri pocketed the phone. Consider this a courtesy warning, Mr. Moretti. Elena Volkov is a ghost, and ghosts do not forgive. He turned and walked back to the SUVs. The Russian convoy rolled out through the gates, leaving Damien standing in the driveway staring at nothing. Victor and Chen exchanged worried glances. Damien pulled out his phone and dialed. Rosalie, lock the study door, now. She obeyed immediately, throwing the deadbolt and grabbing the revolver. What's happening? She asked. Elena Volkov is still in the city, and she knows where you live. The words struck like physical blows. How does she? She hired you. She has your address, your schedule, your mother's address in Queens. Damien's voice came through tight with controlled panic. You need to leave the estate right now. Victor's going to drive you to a safe house uptown. Stay there until I deal with this. What about you? I'm going to find Elena before she finds us. Footsteps echoed through the phone. Damien running. Do not go home. Do not go to your mother. Do not contact anyone. Just disappear. Damien, the study lights went out. All of them. Simultaneously. Emergency lighting kicked in a second later, dim red bulbs casting the room in bloody shadows. Rosalie's pulse hammered. The power just died. Backup generators should have engaged, Damien said. They didn't? They didn't. Someone cut the main and disabled the backups. His voice went cold. She's inside. Rosalie's hand shook on the revolver. Where are you? Second floor, heading to you. Footsteps pounded. Stay on the line. Stay armed. Do not open that door for anyone except me. How will I know it's you? I'll say Brooklyn. The password is Brooklyn. Anyone else tries to get in, you shoot through the door. Rosalie backed against the far wall, weapon raised, watching the locked study door like it might explode inward. Seconds stretched into eternities. Then she heard it. Footsteps in the hallway outside. Slow, deliberate. Someone moving with absolute confidence. They stopped directly outside the study door. A woman's voice, cultured, calm, with the faint trace of an Eastern European accent, spoke through the wood. Hello, Rosalie. Mrs. Chen. Except it wasn't Mrs. Chen. It had never been Mrs. Chen. I know you can hear me, Elena continued. I know you're armed. I know you shot Marcus Vale in the shoulder 2 days ago. Quite impressive for someone who'd never fired a weapon before. Rosalie's finger trembled on the trigger. Damien's coming. Is he, or is Damien currently unconscious in the second-floor library with a sedative dart in his neck? A pause. Oh, did I forget to mention? I'm very good with tranquilizers. No. You're lying, Rosalie said. Am I? Why don't you call him and find out? Rosalie's phone sat on the desk where she'd set it down. Still connected, still active. But no sound came through, no footsteps, no reassuring voice telling her everything was fine. Just silence. He can't help you, Elena said. No one can. The security team is locked in the panic room basement. The remaining staff are zip-tied in the servants' quarters. It's just you and me now, Rosalie, and we need to have a conversation about consequences. I'm not opening this door. You don't have to. Something metallic clicked against the lock. I still have keys to everything in this house. The deadbolt turned. The door swung open. Elena Volkov stood in the doorway, backlit by emergency lighting, looking exactly like the woman Rosalie had known as Mrs. Chen, except for the cold professionalism in her eyes and the suppressed pistol in her right hand. Rosalie raised her revolver with both hands, sighting down the barrel exactly as Damien had taught her. Don't move. Elena smiled. Or what? You'll shoot me like you shot Marcus? Darling, Marcus was standing 6 feet away and not expecting it. I'm 10 feet away, in tactical position with professional training. She took a step forward. You won't even get the gun level before I put 3 rounds in your chest. Try me, Rosalie said. Brave words, but your hands are shaking. Elena took another step. You're not a killer, Rosalie. You're a housemaid playing dress-up in a world you don't understand. You think one gunshot makes you dangerous? You think loyalty to Damien Moretti makes you family? I think you're about to find out. Elena's smile widened. There's that spirit. I almost like you. She raised her weapon. But almost isn't enough. The gunshot that followed wasn't from either of them. It came from behind Elena. The Russian woman's expression flickered from confidence to shock as crimson bloomed across her white blouse. She stumbled forward, pistol clattering from her hand. Damien stood in the hallway holding a smoking gun, his other hand clutching his neck where a tranquilizer dart protruded. Brooklyn, he slurred, swaying. Password is Brooklyn. Then his legs gave out and he collapsed. Elena hit the ground a second later, blood pooling beneath her. Rosalie stood frozen, revolver still raised, watching 2 people bleed out on the study floor while emergency lights painted everything in shades of violence and consequence. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a voice whispered that this was her life now. This was who she'd become. There was no going back. There had never been any going back. Blood spread across white marble in patterns that looked almost beautiful under the emergency lighting. Rosalie stared at the 2 bodies on the study floor. Elena Volkov face down in an expanding crimson pool. Damien collapsed on his side with a tranquilizer dart still embedded in his neck. Neither of them moved. Rosalie's hand shook so badly she nearly dropped the revolver. Her ears rang from gunshots that hadn't come from her weapon. Her lungs couldn't seem to pull enough air. Then Damien's chest rose, fell, rose again. He was breathing. Rosalie dropped to her knees beside him, revolver clattering forgotten on the floor. She grabbed his shoulder and rolled him onto his back. His gray eyes were open but unfocused, pupils blown wide from whatever sedative Elena had used. Damien, her voice came out raw. Damien, can you hear me? His mouth moved. Words formed but barely escaped. Shot her? I know. You saved my life. Rosalie's hands moved to the dart in his neck. She yanked it free and threw it across the room. How much did she give you? Damien, how much sedative? Don't. No. His eyelids drooped. Feels like drowning. Stay awake. Rosalie slapped his face lightly. Look at me. Focus on my voice. But Damien's eyes were already closing. Panic clawed up Rosalie's throat. She'd watched enough medical dramas to know tranquilizer overdoses could stop breathing, stop hearts, kill as efficiently as bullets. She pressed her fingers against his neck, searching for a pulse. There. Faint but steady. She needed help, real help. Medical professionals who could counteract whatever poison Elena had pumped into his system. Rosalie grabbed her phone and dialed 911. The call failed. She tried again. Same result. No signal. No bars. Elena had jammed the phones. Of course she had. Rosalie looked at Elena's body, sprawled 3 feet away. The Russian woman's chest was still. No breathing. No movement. Blood pooled thick and dark beneath her torso where Damien's bullet had punched through her heart. She was dead. Actually dead. Rosalie crawled over on shaking hands and knees. She patted down Elena's body with trembling fingers, searching for anything useful. A phone. A radio. Something. Her hand closed around cold metal in Elena's jacket pocket. A phone. Locked. Fingerprint scanner. Rosalie grabbed Elena's limp hand and pressed the dead woman's thumb against the screen. The phone unlocked. Rosalie's stomach turned, but she forced herself to focus. She opened the call log. The most recent number was listed simply as V. Volkov. Had to be. She dialed. The line connected on the second ring. Dmitry Volkov's accented voice came through cold and professional. Elena, report. Rosalie's voice shook. Elena's dead. Damien Moretti shot her, but she tranquilized him first and he's unconscious, and I don't know how much sedative she used, and I can't get a signal, and slow down. Dimitri's tone shifted from cold to clinical. Who is this? Rosalie Mercer, the housemaid. We met. I know who you are. Where exactly are you right now? Damien's study, the Moretti estate. Elena broke in and cut the power, and she said she locked security in the basement, and... Stop. Listen to me carefully. Dimitri's voice took on the kind of calm authority that cut through panic like a blade. Is Elena definitely dead? Rosalie looked at the body. The blood, the absolute stillness. Yes. And Moretti is breathing? Yes. But barely. Good. The sedative Elena preferred was propofol. Standard dose for a man Moretti's size would be 2.5 milligrams per kilogram. It will wear off in 20 to 40 minutes depending on his metabolism. Keep him on his side so he doesn't choke if he vomits. Monitor his breathing. If it drops below 10 breaths per minute, you need to perform CPR. Rosalie's medical knowledge came from television and sheer desperation. I don't know how, 30 chest compressions, 2 rescue breaths. Repeat until he's breathing normally. Dmitri paused. Can you do that? I don't have a choice. No, you don't. Something that might have been respect entered Dimitri's voice. I'm sending a cleanup crew to your location. They will arrive in 15 minutes. They will remove Elena's body and restore power. Do not interfere with them. Do not call the police. This never happened. Why are you helping us? Because Elena acted without authorization and violated our truce. Her death is not my concern. Maintaining peace with the Moretti organization is. The line went quiet for a moment. 15 minutes, Miss Mercer. Keep him alive that long. Dmitri hung up. Rosalie dropped the phone and crawled back to Damien. She rolled him onto his side like Dmitri had instructed, positioning him so his airway stayed clear. His breathing was shallow but steady. 10 breaths. 11. 12. She counted each one like prayers she didn't believe in. 12 minutes felt like 12 hours. Rosalie sat on the blood-smeared marble, cradling Damien's head in her lap, one hand on his chest, feeling each breath, the other clutching the revolver in case Elena had brought backup that hadn't shown yet. The emergency lights cast everything in shades of red and shadow. Elena's corpse stared at nothing with dead eyes. The smell of blood and gunpowder saturated the air until Rosalie could taste copper on her tongue. She'd never been in a room with a dead body before. Now she was sitting in one. Damien stirred. His eyelids fluttered. "Hey." Rosalie leaned closer. "You with me?" His lips moved. "Rosalie?" "Yeah, it's me." Relief flooded through her. "You're okay. You're going to be okay." "Elena, dead. You shot her. She's dead." Rosalie smoothed hair back from his forehead. "You saved my life. Again." Damien's eyes focused slightly. "Dart. She shot me with dart. Propofol. It's wearing off. You just need to stay awake." "How do you know?" "Dmitry Volkov told me." At Damien's confused expression, Rosalie explained quickly. The jammed phones, Elena's cell, the call to the Russian mob boss who'd tried to kill them 3 days ago and was now providing medical advice. By the time she finished, something that might have been a smile ghosted across Damien's pale face. "You called the Russians for help." "I didn't have a lot of options." "Smart." His hand found hers and squeezed weakly. "You're getting good at this." "At what? Surviving assassination attempts? At thinking like someone who runs an empire." Damien's eyes drifted closed again. "Stay with me. Don't let me sleep. I'm right here." Rosalie squeezed his hand back. "I'm not going anywhere." Atsak. The cleanup crew arrived exactly on schedule. 4 men in black tactical gear entered through the front door Rosalie had unlocked remotely using the estate's security app on Elena's phone. They moved with military precision, 2 heading directly for Elena's body, 1 restoring power to the mansion, the 4th checking Damien's vital signs with professional efficiency. "Pulse is strong," the medic said in accented English, pupils responding. "He'll be fully conscious within the hour." "What about the sedative?" Rosalie asked. "Already metabolizing, no permanent damage." The medic stood and gestured to his colleagues. "We'll handle the rest. You should move Mr. Moretti somewhere more comfortable." Rosalie wanted to argue that moving an unconscious man seemed dangerous, but the crew was already wrapping Elena's body in industrial plastic sheeting with the kind of practiced ease that suggested they'd done this before. Many times before. She helped Damien to his feet, or rather, she became a human crutch while he stumbled upright on legs that barely functioned. Together, they staggered out of the study and down the hallway to the nearest sitting room. Damien collapsed onto a leather sofa. Color was slowly returning to his face. His breathing had deepened, steadied. "How are you feeling?" Rosalie asked. "Like I got hit by a truck." He rubbed his neck where the dart had struck. "But alive. Thanks to you." "You shot Elena. I just made a phone call." "You kept me breathing. You stayed calm. You thought fast." Damien's gray eyes locked onto hers with increasing focus. "You saved my life as much as I saved yours." Before Rosalie could respond, Victor appeared in the doorway looking like he'd been through a war. His shirt was torn, blood streaked his temple, zip tie marks circled his wrist. "Boss?" Relief flooded his voice. "Thank God. We couldn't get out of the basement." Elena welded the panic room door shut from the outside. "We've been trying to cut through for the past 20 minutes. "Everyone okay?" Damien asked. "Chen's got a concussion. A few others got roughed up when Elena ambushed us. But we're alive." Victor's eyes went to the study down the hall, where sounds of the cleanup crew working filtered through. "Is that Elena Volkov, dead?" Damien stood on unsteady legs. "Get Chen medical attention. Do a full head count of all remaining staff. I want to know if anyone else is missing or compromised." "On it." Victor hesitated. "Boss, your mother called the landline 10 minutes ago. Said she needs to speak with you. Something about the FBI." Damien's expression went cold. "What about the FBI?" "She wouldn't say, just that it's urgent." Damien returned the call from his private office, a smaller room adjacent to the study, mercifully free of blood and bodies. Rosalie stood beside him as he dialed, close enough to hear both sides of the conversation on speaker. Catherine Moretti answered on the first ring. "Damien, finally. What do you want?" "No warmth, no forgiveness. Just ice. To warn you, The FBI is building a RICO case against our family. They have a witness, someone who worked in the organization for years and kept detailed records of every transaction, every deal, every crime. Catherine's voice was tight. They're moving fast. Indictments could come as early as next week. Damien's hands curled into fists on the desk. Who's the witness? I don't know. My contact in the bureau wouldn't give me a name, but whoever it is has access to information that goes back a decade. Financial records, communication logs, names, dates, amounts. A pause. Damien, this could destroy everything. I need to what? Run? Destroy evidence? Kill the witness? Damien's voice was deadly quiet. That's what you'd do, isn't it? That's how you'd handle this. That's how your father would have handled it. My father got himself killed because he thought violence solved everything. Damien stood and began pacing. I'm not him, and I'm not you. Then what are you going to do? Damien stopped pacing. His expression shifted into something Rosalie had never seen before, not rage, not fear, but absolute determination. I'm going to talk to them, he said. Silence on the other end. Then, you're going to what? The FBI. I'm going to reach out, arrange a meeting, hear what they want. That's suicide, Catherine said flatly. The moment you walk into a federal building, you're admitting guilt. They'll arrest you on the spot. Maybe, or maybe I can negotiate. Damien's voice was calm, measured. I've spent 5 years legitimizing this organization, divesting from illegal operations, moving assets into legal businesses. I have documentation of every transition, every step toward compliance. That won't matter if their witness has proof of past crimes. It will if I cooperate. If I provide information, they want more than they want me. Damien glanced at Rosalie. I built something here. Something that can survive without blood and violence. I'm not letting it die because someone from the old days decided to turn witness. Catherine laughed, bitter and sharp. You're going to be a rat. After everything your father built, everything this family stood for, you're going to turn informant. I'm going to survive. There's a difference. Not in our world. Then maybe, Damien said quietly, it's time for our world to change. He hung up. Rosalie stared at him. You're serious. You're actually going to talk to the FBI. I don't have a choice. If indictments are coming, I can either run and spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, or I can face it head on and try to control the narrative. Damien sat down heavily. Besides, I'm tired, Rosalie. I'm tired of the violence, the paranoia, the constant threat of betrayal. My own mother tried to have me killed. My best friend sold me out to the Russians. If this is what the life means, maybe it's time to find a different life. What about the organization? The people who depend on you? The legitimate businesses will survive. I've made sure of that. The illegal operations? Damien shrugged. They'll find new leadership or they'll dissolve. Either way, it's not my problem anymore. Rosalie processed this. When? Tomorrow morning. I'll have my lawyers reach out to the bureau, set up a meeting, get ahead of this before they come crashing through the gates with arrest warrants. He looked at her. But first, I need to make sure you're protected. Me? You're implicated in everything that happened this week. Marcus's shooting, Elena's death. You're an accessory at minimum. Conspiracy charges at worst. Damien pulled documents from his desk drawer. Legal papers, dense with text. I had my lawyers draw these up yesterday. They grant you full immunity for any actions taken under my instruction. They establish you as an employee following orders, not a willing participant. Rosalie took the papers with numb fingers. You've been planning this. I've been planning for every contingency since Marcus betrayed me, including the possibility that I'd have to burn everything down to survive. Damien's expression softened. Sign those papers. Tomorrow morning, you walk away from all of this. Clean record. Fresh start. Your mother's medical bills are paid. You'll receive a severance package large enough that you never have to work again unless you want to. You're firing me? I'm setting you free. Damien stood and moved to the window overlooking the estate grounds. Emergency vehicles were pulling away, the cleanup crew finishing their work. You didn't sign up for any of this, Rosalie. You switched poisoned teacups because you're a good person. You shot Marcus because I put you in an impossible situation. You called the Russians for help because I was dying on your lap. He turned to face her. None of this is your fault. And I won't let you go down with me when the federal government comes knocking. Rosalie looked at the immunity papers, at this man who'd become something between employer and ally and partner over the past week of violence and revelation. What if I don't want to walk away? She asked quietly. Damien's expression flickered with something that might have been hope or fear. What? You said I'm part of this family, that I earned my place at the table. Rosalie set the papers on his desk unsigned. So let me stay. Let me help you navigate whatever comes next. Rosalie, you don't understand what you're asking. I understand perfectly. She stepped closer. I understand that you're about to walk into the FBI and potentially destroy your entire legacy to build something better. I understand that you'll be facing federal prosecutors and criminal charges and the wrath of every old-school mobster who thinks you're betraying the code. Her voice strengthened. And I understand that you're planning to do it alone because you don't think you deserve help. Damien's jaw tightened. I don't. Too bad. You're getting it anyway. Rosalie crossed her arms. I didn't survive assassination attempts and Russian hit squads, and your psychotic mother just to walk away when things get difficult. You said I'm family? Prove it. Let me stand beside you. For a long moment, Damien just stared at her. Then slowly, something in his expression cracked. The armor he wore, the cold calculation, the ruthless efficiency, the Wounded King Act, fell away completely. What remained was a man who'd been alone for far too long. Okay, he said quietly. Okay. Sec. They spent the rest of the night preparing. Damien's lawyers arrived at 3 a.m., 3 sharp-dressed men who looked like they billed by the minute and earned every dollar. They spread documents across the conference table adjacent to the study and walked Damien through every legal strategy, every potential outcome, every risk. Rosalie sat beside him taking notes, asking questions, refusing to leave even when the lawyers suggested this was privileged conversation. She stays, Damien had said. Everything you tell me, you tell her. The lawyers had exchanged glances but obeyed. By 6 a.m., they had a plan. Damien would reach out to the FBI through official channels, request a proffer session, an off-the-record conversation where he could gauge what they knew and what they wanted. Depending on that meeting, he'd either negotiate a cooperation agreement or prepare for trial. The lawyers laid out the best-case scenario. Damien provides information on other criminal organizations in exchange for immunity on past crimes. He maintains control of his legitimate businesses. The illegal operations get dismantled, but he walks away free. Worst-case scenario. The FBI rejects cooperation. Indictments come down. Damien faces decades in federal prison. What are the odds? Rosalie asked. The lead lawyer, a gray-haired man named Kaufman, didn't sugarcoat it. 50-50. Depends on what their witness gave them. Depends on how badly they want to take down the organization versus taking down one man. He looked at Damien. You've made a lot of enemies cleaning up your father's empire. Some of them might be in positions to influence this case. Meaning? Meaning federal prosecutors are people too. And people can be swayed by personal feelings. Kaufman closed his briefcase. Be prepared for them to hate you, Mr. Moretti. Be prepared for them to want to bury you regardless of what you offer. Damien nodded slowly. When can we arrange the meeting? I'll make calls this morning. Assuming they're willing to talk, we could have a proffer session as early as tomorrow. Make it happen. The lawyers left at 6:47 a.m. The sun was rising over New York, painting the sky in shades of gold and blood. Rosalie stood at the window watching light spill across the estate. Behind her, Damien sat at the conference table, surrounded by legal documents and cold coffee. You should get some sleep, he said. So should you. Can't. Too much to think about. Rosalie turned from the window. Damien looked exhausted. Dark circles under his eyes, stubble covering his jaw, the weight of impending decisions bowing his shoulders. She walked over and sat beside him. What are you thinking about? She asked. My father. Damien's voice was distant. He built this empire from nothing, came to New York with $300 and a willingness to do whatever it took to survive. By the time he died, he controlled half the organized crime in the tri-state area. He paused. And I'm about to tear it all down. You're transforming it. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like betrayal. like I'm spitting on his grave. Your father also got himself killed in a restaurant parking lot because he refused to adapt. Rosalie's tone was gentle but firm. You're doing what he couldn't, evolving, building something that lasts beyond violence and fear. Damien looked at her. You really believe that? I believe you're the only person in this organization with the courage to try. She reached out and took his hand. And I believe you're not doing it alone anymore. His fingers tightened around hers. Why are you doing this, Rosalie? Really? You could take the immunity papers and walk away, start over, be safe. Because safe is boring. A smile ghosted across her face. And because you looked at me when everyone else looked through me. You trusted me when you had no reason to. You made me part of something bigger than scrubbing floors and dodging debt collectors. She paused. You gave me a choice when my whole life had been about survival, so now I'm choosing to stay. Damien stood and pulled her to her feet. For a moment they just stood there, hands clasped, exhaustion and adrenaline and something deeper binding them together. Then he leaned down and kissed her. It wasn't gentle, it wasn't romantic, it was desperate and fierce, and tasted like coffee and blood, and the kind of raw honesty that came from staring death in the face and deciding to live anyway. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Damien rested his forehead against hers. If we do this, he said quietly, if we really do this, talk to the FBI, dismantle the old empire, build something new, our lives will never be the same. We'll have enemies everywhere. The feds might still prosecute. The old families will see us as traitors. We could lose everything. We could. Rosalie's hands moved to his face, holding him steady. Or we could win. Build something real, something that doesn't require looking over our shoulders for the rest of our lives. You make it sound possible. It is possible, if we're smart, if we're careful. She kissed him again, softer this time. If we trust each other. Damien pulled her closer. I trust you with my life, Rosalie Mercer. Good. She smiled against his mouth. Because we're about to bet both our lives on this plan. Keep keep. The call came at 9:23 a.m. Kaufman's voice crackled through the speakerphone, professional but edged with tension. The FBI agreed to meet tomorrow, 2 p.m. Federal Plaza in Manhattan. Damien's hand stilled on the coffee cup he'd been holding. That fast? They're motivated, which means their case is either very strong or very weak. We won't know until we're in the room. Kaufman paused. Mr. Moretti, I need to be clear about what you're walking into. A proffer session means anything you say can't be used against you in court, unless you lie. If they catch you in a single false statement, the agreement is void and everything becomes evidence. I understand. Do you? Because the moment you admit to criminal activity, even activity from a decade ago, you're giving them ammunition. They could decide cooperation isn't worth the deal and prosecute you anyway. Damien glanced at Rosalie. She nodded encouragement. I'll take that risk, Damien said. Set it up. Already done. I'll meet you outside Federal Plaza at 1:30 p.m. tomorrow. Bring nothing. Say nothing to anyone about this meeting. Kaufman's voice dropped. And Mr. Moretti? Be prepared to give them something big, something they want more than they want you, otherwise this meeting ends in handcuffs. The line went dead. Rosalie looked at Damien. Something big? What does he mean? Damien stood and walked to the wall safe hidden behind a painting of his father. He spun the combination locks, numbers only he knew, and pulled open the steel door. Inside were 3 identical black external hard drives. My father kept detailed records of every deal, every transaction, every piece of leverage he collected over 30 years running this organization. Damien pulled out one of the drives. Names, dates, amounts, judges who took bribes, cops who looked the other way, politicians who accepted campaign contributions in exchange for favorable legislation. He held up the drive. Everything. Rosalie's eyes widened. You're going to give them that? I'm going to give them enough to make cooperation worthwhile. Enough to show I'm serious about dismantling the old system. Damien's jaw tightened. It means burning bridges with people my father called allies. It means destroying relationships built over decades. It means becoming exactly what my mother accused me of. A rat. Or it means being smart enough to survive in a world that's changed. Maybe. Damien closed the safe and locked it. Either way, tomorrow everything changes. Win or lose, there's no going back after that meeting. Rosalie moved to stand beside him. Then we better make sure we win. Chad. They spent the day preparing. Damien walked Rosalie through every detail of the organization's structure. Who reported to whom? Which operations were legal versus criminal? Where the bodies were buried both literally and figuratively. She absorbed information like a sponge, asking sharp questions, connecting dots Damien hadn't even considered. By evening, she understood the empire better than some people who'd worked in it for years. You're good at this, Damien said as they reviewed financial documents in the study. At what? Learning how to run a criminal organization? At strategy. At seeing the whole board instead of just the pieces in front of you. He leaned back in his chair. You'd make a hell of a consigliere. Rosalie laughed. Pretty sure that position just became very available. The humor faded quickly. Marcus was gone. Elena was dead. Catherine was exiled. Half the staff had been fired or arrested. The Moretti organization that had existed a week ago had been gutted from the inside out. What remained was a skeleton crew and a man trying to rebuild an empire into something that wouldn't destroy him. Are you scared? Rosalie asked quietly. Terrified, Damien admitted, but more scared of what happens if I don't try. If I just let the old system continue. If I become my father and die in a parking lot at 53 with a bullet in my head and nothing to show for it except blood and money. You're already better than that. Am I? I've killed people, Rosalie, ordered hits, destroyed lives. I've done things that would make you run screaming if you knew the details. I know enough, Rosalie said, and I'm still here. Damien looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something he'd never expected to find in his world. Unconditional loyalty. Not bought with money or coerced with threats. Not based on fear or obligation or family blood. Just choice. She'd chosen him when she had every reason to run, and that meant more than anything his empire had ever given him. Come here, he said quietly. Rosalie moved around the desk. Damien pulled her into his lap, arms wrapping around her waist, face buried against her shoulder. For a long moment they just sat there. Two people who'd survived assassination attempts and betrayal and violence, holding on to each other like drowning swimmers clutching driftwood. Whatever happens tomorrow, Damien murmured against her neck, I need you to know something. What? You changed everything. From the moment you switched those teacups, you changed the trajectory of my entire life. He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. I was ready to die, Rosalie. Not quickly, slowly, over years, ground down by paranoia and violence until there was nothing left but the monster everyone expected me to be. But you showed me a different path. Rosalie's hands moved to his face. We showed each other. I was drowning too, in debt and exhaustion and invisibility. You pulled me out. So what does that make us? Partners, Rosalie said, in every sense of the word. Damien kissed her then, slow and deep and filled with everything he couldn't put into words. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. Tomorrow, he said, we walk into that federal building together. We face whatever comes. And we walk out on the other side still standing. Together, Rosalie agreed. Together. Fine. Night fell over the Moretti estate like a curtain on the final act. Damien and Rosalie moved through the mansion securing everything that mattered. Transferring files to encrypted servers, moving valuables to safety deposit boxes, ensuring that if tomorrow went badly and federal agents raided the property, they'd find nothing incriminating. By midnight, the estate was clean. Too clean. Sterile. Like a stage set waiting for the play to end. They ended up in Damien's private quarters, a suite of rooms on the third floor that Rosalie had cleaned 100 times but never truly seen. Without the pretense of blindness, Damien moved through the space with easy familiarity, pouring whiskey into crystal glasses and handing one to Rosalie. To survival, he said, raising his glass. To transformation, Rosalie corrected. They drank. The whiskey burned going down, smooth and expensive and completely unlike anything Rosalie had tasted before. It warmed her from the inside out, loosening muscles that had been tense for days. What happens if they arrest you tomorrow? She asked. My lawyers post bail. We fight the charges. It could take years. Damien set down his glass. But if it comes to that, you walk away. Take the immunity papers. Disappear. Build a life somewhere far from this mess. Not happening. Rosalie, I said not happening. Her voice was steel. You don't get to make that choice for me anymore. If you go down, I go down with you. If you fight, I fight. That's the deal. Damien's expression shifted through a dozen emotions: frustration, fear, gratitude, something that looked dangerously close to love. You're going to get yourself killed standing beside me, he said quietly. Maybe. Rosalie moved closer until they were inches apart. Or maybe we're going to build something that lasts. Something worth the risk. You're insane. Probably, she smiled. But so are you. Damien pulled her close and kissed her like the world was ending and she was the only solid thing left. They stumbled toward the bedroom, shedding clothes and inhibitions and the weight of everything that had happened. What followed was desperate and fierce and absolutely human. Two people choosing connection over isolation, hope over despair, life over the violence that had defined them both. Afterward, they lay tangled together in expensive sheets, watching dawn approach through floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. I love you, Damien said quietly. I don't know when it happened. Maybe when you switched those cups. Maybe when you shot Marcus. Maybe 10 seconds ago, but I do. Rosalie's heart stuttered. That's terrible timing. I know. We're about to walk into the FBI and potentially destroy everything you've built. I know. And you choose now to tell me you love me? Yeah. Damien's arms tightened around her. Because if tomorrow goes wrong, I don't want to die without saying it. And if tomorrow goes right, I want you to know that everything we build from here is built on more than survival. It's built on this. Rosalie turned in his arms until they were face to face. I love you too. Even though you're complicated and dangerous and possibly about to ruin both our lives. Even though? Because of, she corrected. Because you're the first person who saw me as something more than invisible. Because you trusted me with your life. Because you're trying to be better than the world that made you. Damien kissed her softly. Then let's go be better. Together. Together? Rosalie agreed. They fell asleep wrapped around each other as sunlight spilled across New York, and the clock ticked toward 2 p.m., toward the moment everything would change, toward the federal building where two choices waited, freedom or destruction, and neither of them knew which one they'd walk out with, but they'd face it together. That was enough. It had to be enough. The federal building in Lower Manhattan rose like a concrete monument to authority, all sharp angles and reflective glass designed to make anyone approaching it feel small. Rosalie stood on the sidewalk at 1:28 p.m., staring up at those windows and wondering how many lives had been destroyed behind them. Beside her, Damien looked like he was heading to a funeral. He wore a tailored charcoal suit, white shirt, no tie. The kind of outfit that said, I respect your institution, but I'm not afraid of it. His expression was carved from stone, but Rosalie could see tension in the way his jaw worked, the way his fingers tapped against his thigh. You don't have to come inside, he said quietly. You can wait in the car. This meeting is just me and the lawyers. We've been over this. Rosalie adjusted the simple black dress she'd borrowed from the estate's guest wardrobe. I'm coming. The FBI will ask questions about Marcus, about Elena, about everything you witnessed. Let them ask. She took his hand. I'm not afraid. That was a lie. She was terrified. But fear didn't mean retreat. Kaufman emerged from a black town car with 2 other lawyers in tow. The gray-haired attorney looked like he'd spent the night preparing for war. Briefcase bulging with documents, tablet glowing with encrypted files, the sharp focus of a man who billed $600 an hour and earned every cent. Ready? He asked Damien. As I'll ever be. Remember the rules. Answer only what's asked. Volunteer nothing. If I tell you to stop talking, you stop immediately. Kaufman's eyes cut to Rosalie. Miss Mercer, you're not part of the proffer agreement. Anything you say in that room can be used against you. Are you certain you want to attend? Positive. Kaufman sighed but didn't argue further. Then let's go make a deal with the devil. They entered the building at 1:33 p.m. The security checkpoint felt designed to strip away dignity. Metal detectors, pat-downs, bags searched, phones confiscated, every step a reminder that this was federal territory and everyone entering was a potential criminal. Rosalie watched Damien submit to the search with quiet composure. No resistance, no complaints. Just a man accepting the price of entry. They rode an elevator to the 14th floor in silence. The doors opened onto a sterile hallway lined with identical conference rooms, each one a stage for negotiations that determined whether people walked free or spent decades in prison. An FBI agent met them outside conference room 14C. She was maybe 40, with sharp eyes and the kind of neutral expression that gave nothing away. Her badge identified her as Special Agent Monica Torres. Mr. Moretti? Mr. Kaufman. Torres's gaze slid to Rosalie. And you are? Rosalie Mercer, Kaufman said before Rosalie could answer. Miss Mercer is Mr. Moretti's advisor and will be attending this meeting as an observer. Torres's eyebrow lifted slightly. Advisor, that's a new one. She gestured toward the conference room. Inside. We'll begin in 5 minutes. The room was exactly what Rosalie expected. Long table, uncomfortable chairs, one-way mirror taking up the entire north wall. Someone was watching from the other side. Multiple someones, probably. Damien sat at the head of the table. Rosalie took the chair beside him. Kaufman and his associates flanked them like bodyguards made of legal jargon and billable hours. Agent Torres entered with 2 men, one in his 50s wearing an expensive suit that screamed federal prosecutor, the other younger with the lean build and cold eyes of someone who'd spent years in organized crime divisions. Assistant U.S. Attorney Richard Brennan, the older man said, extending no handshake. This is Special Agent Dominic Reyes. We'll be conducting this proffer session. Brennan opened a leather folder and pulled out a single sheet of paper. Before we begin, Mr. Moretti, I need you to understand the parameters of this meeting. Everything you say today is off the record and cannot be used against you in court, with one exception. If you lie, the agreement is void and all statements become admissible evidence. Do you understand? I understand, Damien said. Good. Brennan settled into his chair like a judge mounting the bench. Let's start with the basics. How long have you been involved in organized criminal activity? Damien didn't hesitate. Since I was 17. My father brought me into the family business. I started running collections for loan sharks in Queens. And when did you assume leadership of the Moretti organization? 5 years ago, after my father was killed. Brennan made notes on a legal pad. During your tenure as head of this organization, what criminal enterprises did you oversee? Damien's jaw tightened. This was the moment. The confession that would either save him or destroy him. Loan sharking, illegal gambling, money laundering through legitimate businesses, protection rackets in Brooklyn and parts of Manhattan. His voice stayed level, factual. I also inherited relationships with other crime families that involved coordinating drug distribution and weapons trafficking, though I divested from both within the first 2 years of taking over. Divested, Reyes repeated, speaking for the first time. His voice had a Bronx edge. That's a corporate word for criminal activity. It's an accurate word, Damien countered. I spent 5 years systematically transitioning the organization away from violent crime and toward legitimate business operations, real estate development, tech investments, hospitality ventures. Every dollar I made from legal sources replaced a dollar made illegally. How noble, Brennan said dryly. You were cleaning up your father's legacy. I was trying to survive without ending up dead or in prison. Apparently I failed at the latter. Rosalie watched the prosecutors exchange glances. They'd expected defiance or denial. Instead, they were getting candid admission and calculated cooperation. Brennan leaned forward. Mr. Moretti, we've been building this case for 18 months. We have a cooperating witness who provided detailed documentation of your organization's criminal activities going back a decade. Financial records, communication logs, names of associates, corrupt officials, and criminal partners. He paused. What could you possibly offer us that we don't already have? Damien reached into his jacket pocket, slowly, so no one would panic, and pulled out a USB drive. He set it on the table between them. Everything, he said quietly. Brennan stared at the drive. Explain. My father kept records of every deal, every transaction, every piece of leverage he collected over 30 years. Judges who took bribes, police officers who accepted payoffs, Politicians who traded favors for campaign contributions, business owners who laundered money, prosecutors who buried cases. Damien's gray eyes locked onto Brennan's. That drive contains copies of files documenting corruption across 5 states and 3 federal districts. Names, dates, amounts, proof. Everything you'd need to build cases against at least 40 individuals currently in positions of public trust. The room went silent. Reyes reached for the drive. Brennan stopped him with a raised hand. "And you're offering this in exchange for what?" the prosecutor asked. "Immunity for myself and Miss Mercer for any crimes committed prior to today. Dismantling of all illegal operations within the Moretti organization. Full cooperation with ongoing investigations into other crime families." Damien's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "In exchange, I walk away from this life. I keep my legitimate businesses. And you get enough corruption cases to make your career." Brennan's expression didn't change, but Rosalie saw calculation in his eyes. The math was simple. Trade one reform mobster for dozens of corrupt officials. "We'll need to verify the contents of this drive," Brennan said carefully. "Be my guest." Damien pushed the drive across the table. "But I'm not negotiating blind. Before we go further, I need to know who your cooperating witness is." "That's confidential." "Then we're done here." Damien stood. "I'm not handing you my father's legacy without knowing who betrayed mine." Brennan and Reyes exchanged glances. Some silent communication passed between them. Finally, Brennan spoke. "Your driver, Anton Petrov. He's been recording conversations in your vehicle for the past 14 months. Rosalie felt Damien go absolutely still beside her. Anton. The man who'd been grinding sedatives into his morning coffee. The man Damien had trusted to drive him to meetings, to dinners, to the hospital after he'd been shot. "Anton," Damien repeated quietly. "He approached us 18 months ago claiming he wanted out of organized crime, said he'd provide evidence in exchange for witness protection." Brennan's tone was clinical. "He's been wearing a wire and documenting your activities ever since." Damien sat back down slowly, his hands curled into fists on the table. "Where is he now?" His voice was barely above a whisper. "Protective custody. You'll never see him again." For a long moment, Damien just breathed. Rosalie reached under the table and took his hand. His fingers were cold, trembling with suppressed rage. "Anton testified that you ordered the murder of a Russian national named Elena Volkov 3 days ago," Reyes said. "He claims he overheard you planning it." "That's a lie," Rosalie said before she could stop herself. All eyes turned toward her. "Miss Mercer," Kaufman said warningly. "It's a lie," she repeated, louder. "Elena Volkov broke into the Moretti estate with the intent to kill Mr. Moretti. She tranquilized him and threatened me at gunpoint. He shot her in self-defense. I was there. I witnessed everything." Brennan's eyes narrowed. "You're willing to testify to that under oath?" "Absolutely." "Interesting." The prosecutor made more notes. "Because Anton claims Miss Mercer is Mr. Moretti's accomplice, that she shot Marcus Vale on his orders." "I shot Marcus Vale to prevent him from shooting Mr. Moretti," Rosalie said, voice shaking but steady. "Marcus had just confessed to orchestrating a conspiracy to murder his employer. He was armed, he was dangerous, and I did what I had to do to survive." "Do you have proof of this conspiracy?" "Yes." Damien pulled out his phone, the one item security had returned after the checkpoint, and opened a video file. He turned the screen toward the prosecutors. "Surveillance footage from my estate, audio and video of Marcus Vale meeting with Russian operatives planning my assassination. Time-stamped, unedited, admissible in court." He hit play. The library meeting unfolded on the small screen. Marcus's voice, clear as crystal, discussing timeline, payment, 6 men with suppressed weapons. The tall Russian confirming the deal, every word damning. When the video ended, Brennan sat back in his chair. "Anton didn't mention any of this," he said quietly. "Because Anton didn't know," Damien replied. "He was part of the conspiracy, one of many staff members who'd been compromised by Marcus and the Russians. He was drugging me, stealing from me, reporting my movements to people planning to kill me." He leaned forward. "Your star witness is a traitor who fed you lies mixed with just enough truth to seem credible." Reyes looked like he'd bitten into something rotten. "We vetted Anton extensively." "You vetted a man who told you what you wanted to hear," Damien interrupted. That I was a violent crime boss ordering hits and running criminal enterprises. And maybe 5 years ago that would have been accurate. But for the past 18 months, while Anton was recording conversations, I was divesting from illegal operations and trying to go legitimate. He gave you a narrative that fit your preconceptions instead of the truth. Brennan closed his folder. We'll need time to review this new evidence. Take all the time you need. Damien stood again. But here's my final offer. I give you that USB drive with documentation on 40 corrupt officials. I cooperate fully with your investigations into other crime families. I dismantle every illegal operation in my organization and submit to federal oversight for the next 5 years to ensure compliance. In exchange, you grant immunity to myself and Miss Mercer, you drop any pending charges, and you let us walk away from this life. And if we refuse, then I take my chances at trial. I use the surveillance footage to discredit Anton. I expose the conspiracy that nearly got me killed, and I make this case so messy and complicated that it takes you 5 years just to get to jury selection. Damien's expression was cold. Or you can take the deal. Get your corruption cases, claim victory over organized crime, and let one reformed criminal fade into obscurity. Brennan stared at him for a long moment. Then he picked up the USB drive. We'll review the contents. If everything you've claimed is accurate, we'll draft a cooperation agreement. He stood. But understand this, Mr. Moretti. One mistake, one violation, one hint that you're still involved in criminal activity, and this deal is void. You'll spend the rest of your life in a federal penitentiary. Are we clear? Crystal, Damien said. The prosecutors left without another word. The walk out of the federal building felt surreal. Rosalie's legs moved on autopilot, carrying her through hallways and security checkpoints and out into afternoon sunlight that felt too bright after the fluorescent sterility inside. Damien said nothing until they were in the town car pulling away from the curb. Then he exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for hours. We did it, Rosalie said quietly. Maybe. Damien's hand shook as he loosened his collar. They have to verify the files, draft the agreement, actually follow through. Nothing's guaranteed. But they listened. They didn't arrest you. That's something. That's everything. He turned to look at her. You were incredible in there. The way you spoke up, the way you testified about Elena. I told the truth. You risked yourself. For me. Damien's voice cracked slightly. You keep doing that, putting yourself in danger for someone who doesn't deserve it. Rosalie took his face in her hands. You deserve it. You deserve someone who stands beside you, who doesn't run when things get hard. She kissed him softly. And I'm not going anywhere. Kaufman, sitting in the front passenger seat, cleared his throat. I hate to interrupt, but we should discuss next steps. Assuming the prosecutors accept the deal, you'll need to begin the process of divesting from all criminal enterprises immediately. That means cutting ties with certain business partners, closing specific operations, and submitting financial records for federal review. How long? Damien asked. 6 months. Maybe a year. It's complicated. Kaufman turned to face them. But if you're serious about going legitimate, this is your chance. Clean slate, fresh start. Damien nodded slowly. Then that's what we'll do. The call came 3 days later. Rosalie was in the estate library sorting through legal documents when Damien's phone rang. She watched his expression shift from neutral to disbelief to something that looked dangerously close to relief. Understood, he said into the phone. Yes, we'll review and sign, thank you. He hung up. They accepted, he said quietly. Full immunity in exchange for cooperation. The agreement will be ready for signature tomorrow. Rosalie's knees went weak. She sat down hard on the nearest chair. It's over, she whispered. It's over, Damien confirmed. Then he started laughing. Not humor, but the kind of slightly hysterical release that came from surviving something that should have killed you. Rosalie joined him. Both of them collapsed on expensive furniture in a mansion that had hosted violence and betrayal and redemption, laughing until tears streamed down their faces. When they finally caught their breath, Damien pulled her close. We did it, he said. We actually did it. What now? Rosalie asked. Now? Damien looked around the estate, at the marble floors she'd scrubbed, at the walls that had witnessed conspiracy and murder, at the legacy his father had built through blood. Now we tear it all down and build something better. The next 6 months passed in a blur of legal paperwork and systematic dismantling. Damien closed the loan sharking operations first, contacting every borrower personally, forgiving debts that couldn't be legally collected, and dissolving the entire enterprise. The illegal gambling rings followed, shut down and converted into legitimate entertainment venues with proper licensing. The money laundering networks proved more complicated. Federal oversight required tracing every dollar, documenting every transaction, proving that illicit funds had been fully separated from legitimate business operations. It took 4 months and cost Damien millions in fines and penalties. But he paid it all without complaint. Rosalie watched him transform in real time. The wounded king, pretending to be blind, became a businessman building something sustainable. The violence that had defined his world gave way to spreadsheets and board meetings and long conversations with lawyers about compliance. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't exciting, but it was honest. The hardest part came when Damien had to sever ties with the other crime families. "They'll see you as a traitor," Rosalie said one night as they reviewed a list of relationships that needed to be ended. "I know." Damien's expression was grim. "But that's the price of walking away. Some bridges have to burn." He made the calls personally, explained his decision to go legitimate, offered to refer business partners to other organizations, accepted the anger and accusations and threats that followed. One conversation in particular stood out. An old friend of his father's, a man named Salvatore who'd helped build the Moretti Empire in its early days, called Damien a disgrace to his bloodline, said his father would be ashamed. Damien had listened in silence, then responded quietly, "My father died bleeding out in a parking lot at 53 years old. If being a disgrace means I get to live past 60, I'll take it." Salvatore had hung up without another word. That night, Damien stood at the estate windows staring out at New York for hours. Rosalie found him there at 2 a.m., shoulders bowed with the weight of burned bridges and lost legacy. "Second thoughts?" she asked softly. "Every day." He turned to face her. "But then I remember the alternative. Remember Marcus's betrayal, Elena's attack, my mother funding a coup, all the violence and paranoia, and constantly looking over my shoulder waiting for the next knife in the back." He pulled Rosalie close. "I don't want that life anymore. I want this. Whatever this is." "This is boring," Rosalie said with a smile. "Paperwork and lawyers and legitimate business deals. This is survival," Damien corrected. "Real survival. Not just staying alive, but actually living." Plus, 8 months after the federal meeting, the Moretti organization officially ceased to exist as a criminal enterprise. The announcement came via press release drafted by Kaufman's firm. The Moretti family announces its complete divestment from all non-licensed business operations and full cooperation with federal authorities in ongoing investigations into organized crime. News outlets picked up the story within hours. Headlines screamed about the fall of a crime dynasty, the end of an era, the rare sight of a mobster actually walking away. Some praised Damien's courage. Others called him a coward and a rat. He ignored all of it. The estate itself underwent transformation. Damien sold the mansion to a tech billionaire for $30 million, using the proceeds to establish a foundation focused on providing medical care to low-income families in Queens. The foundation's first beneficiary was Rosalie's mother, full coverage for her rheumatoid arthritis treatments, a home health aid, physical therapy, everything insurance had refused to cover. When Rosalie visited her mother and explained what had happened, carefully edited to remove the violence and focus on Damien's generosity, the older woman had cried. "He did this for you," her mother said. "He did this for both of us," Rosalie corrected. 1 year after the proffer session, Rosalie and Damien stood in the lobby of a newly renovated building in Brooklyn. The space had been a warehouse once, one of the locations the Moretti organization had used for illegal operations. Now it was a community center, computer labs for job training, meeting rooms for support groups, a commercial kitchen where former gang members learned culinary skills, all funded by the Moretti Foundation, all designed to give people the second chances Damien himself had fought so hard to earn. "Your father would hate this," Rosalie said as they toured the nearly finished facility. "I know. Damien's smile was bittersweet. But my father's dead, and I'm trying to build something that lasts longer than his legacy did. You already have. Rosalie gestured to the space around them. This is real. This matters. This helps people instead of destroying them. We help people, Damien corrected, pulling her close. You're as much a part of this as I am. That was true. Rosalie had become the foundation's executive director, overseeing operations, managing budgets, ensuring that every dollar went toward actual community benefit instead of administrative overhead. She'd gone from invisible housemaid to the public face of legitimate philanthropy in less than 2 years. Some days it still felt surreal. What are you thinking? Damien asked, reading her expression. That I used to scrub floors in a mansion owned by a crime boss. Rosalie laughed quietly. Now I run a foundation with a budget of $40 million. How did we get here? You switched poison in teacups. I pretended to be blind. And somehow we survived long enough to become different people. Damien's arms tightened around her waist. Better people, I'd like to think. Definitely better. Rosalie turned in his embrace until they were face to face. Though I still have nightmares about Marcus, about Elena, about all of it. So do I. Damien's expression went distant. I wake up sometimes convinced someone's coming through the door with a gun. That it's all going to collapse, and I'll end up like my father, dead in a parking lot with nothing to show for my life except violence. But then you wake up fully, Rosalie said gently, and you remember that you're not him. You're not that person anymore. Are you sure? Because some days I look in the mirror and see my father staring back. I'm sure. Rosalie's hands moved to his face, holding him steady. Your father built an empire on fear and died alone. You're building a legacy on second chances, and you have me. That's the difference. Damien kissed her, soft and grateful and filled with everything he couldn't put into words. When they broke apart, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Rosalie's breath caught. I was going to wait until tonight, Damien said, voice shaking slightly. Do this properly at dinner with wine and candlelight and all the romantic bullshit. But standing here in this building, in this symbol of everything we've built together, it feels right. He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple platinum band with a single diamond, elegant and understated and absolutely perfect. Rosalie Mercer. Damien's gray eyes locked onto hers. You saved my life more times than I can count. You stood beside me when everyone else ran. You helped me become someone I'm not ashamed to see in the mirror. He took a shaky breath. Will you marry me? Rosalie's vision blurred with tears. You're proposing in an empty community center in Brooklyn. I'm proposing in the place that represents our future instead of my past. Damien's smile was tentative, hopeful. Is that a yes? That's a yes. Rosalie laughed through tears. That's absolutely a yes. Damien slipped the ring onto her finger with trembling hands. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. He'd probably measured her finger while she slept. They kissed in the middle of the empty lobby, surrounded by construction dust and fresh paint and the smell of something new being built from something broken. The wedding happened 6 months later in a small ceremony at City Hall. No massive guest list, no crime family representatives, no politicians or powerful figures buying influence through attendance. Just Rosalie's mother, Kaufman, and his wife, Victor and Chen, who'd stayed loyal through everything, and a handful of friends they'd made in their new legitimate life. Damien wore a simple navy suit. Rosalie wore a white dress she'd bought off the rack at Macy's. They exchanged vows that promised partnership and honesty and standing together through whatever came next. When the judge pronounced them married, Damien kissed his wife like she was the only real thing in a world of illusions. And maybe she was. 2 years after the proffer session, Rosalie stood in the Moretti Foundation offices reviewing grant applications. The foundation had grown beyond their initial expectations. $40 million in assets had become $60 through careful investments and additional donations. They'd opened 3 more community centers across New York. They'd funded medical care for hundreds of families. They'd provided job training that got people real employment instead of criminal alternatives. It wasn't enough to undo all the harm the Moretti organization had caused over decades, but it was a start. Damien entered the office carrying 2 cups of coffee. Decaf for both of them. No sedatives, no poison, just normal coffee like normal people drank. The Brooklyn Center hit full capacity, he said, handing her a cup. We have a waiting list of 50 people wanting to use the computer labs. Then we need to expand. Rosalie pulled up budget projections on her laptop. I think we can allocate another $200,000 toward upgrading the facilities. Done. Damien leaned against her desk, watching her work with the kind of quiet contentment that had replaced the constant vigilance of his former life. You know what I realized today? What? I've been legitimate for 2 years now. No federal violations, no criminal activity, no looking over my shoulder waiting for rivals to put me in the ground. He smiled. I'm actually boring now. You're not boring. Rosalie stood and moved into his arms. You're stable. There's a difference. Is there? Because I spend my days reviewing nonprofit budgets and attending community board meetings. 5 years ago, I was running a crime empire. And you're happier now than you were then. It wasn't a question. Damien considered this. Yeah, I am. I sleep through the night. I don't carry a gun everywhere. I trust the people around me. His arms tightened around her. I have you. You've always had me, from the moment I switched those cups. I know. He kissed the top of her head. Best decision a housemaid ever made. Rosalie pulled back enough to look at him. You know what I realized today? What? I'm not invisible anymore. She gestured to the office, to the foundation work, to the life they'd built. People see me, respect me, value my opinions, and it's because you saw me first when no one else did. You were never invisible, Rosalie. You were just surrounded by blind people. She laughed and pulled him into a kiss that tasted like coffee and promises kept. Tuck. 5 years after the proffer session, the Moretti Foundation celebrated its anniversary with a gala at the Brooklyn Community Center. 300 people attended, former gang members who'd gone legitimate, families who'd received medical assistance, kids who'd learned job skills, community leaders who'd partnered with the foundation. Rosalie stood at the podium, giving a speech about second chances and redemption and building something better from broken foundations. The audience listened with the kind of attention reserved for people who understood those concepts from personal experience. Damien watched from the front row, pride written across his features. When Rosalie finished and stepped down from the podium, the crowd erupted in applause. She made her way through well-wishers and grateful families until she reached her husband. Good speech, he said. I had a good teacher. She took his hand. You ready to go home? Almost. Damien pulled her toward a quieter corner of the room. There's someone I want you to meet first. He gestured toward a young woman standing near the refreshments table. Maybe 19 or 20, nervous energy radiating from her thin frame. Rosalie, this is Carmen. She applied for the job training program last month. Carmen extended a shaking hand. Mrs. Moretti, thank you for accepting my application. I know my background isn't great. Neither was mine, Rosalie said gently, shaking her hand. What matters is where you're going, not where you've been. Relief flooded Carmen's face. I want to go to culinary school, learn to be a real chef. Not just cooking in some fast food place, but actually creating food that means something. Then that's what you'll do. Rosalie pulled out her phone and made a note. I'll have our program coordinator connect you with our culinary training partner. They've placed 15 graduates in professional kitchens across the city. Carmen's eyes went wide. Really? Just like that? Just like that. Rosalie smiled. Everyone deserves a chance to build a better life. Sometimes they just need someone to believe in them first. After Carmen walked away beaming, Damien pulled Rosalie close. That's why we do this, he said quietly. Those moments. Giving people what we had to fight so hard to get ourselves. Second chances. Second chances, he agreed. They stayed at the gala for another hour, talking with families and volunteers and community members. When they finally left, the Brooklyn night was cool and clear, stars visible despite the city lights. Damien drove them home, not to the estate that had housed violence and betrayal, but to a brownstone in Park Slope they'd purchased 2 years earlier. 3 bedrooms, a garden, normal neighbors who had no idea their quiet philanthropist neighbors used to run organized crime. Inside, they collapsed on the sofa with the exhausted satisfaction of people who'd spent the day doing meaningful work. I'm tired, Rosalie said, kicking off her heels. Good tired or bad tired? Good tired, the kind that comes from building something instead of surviving something. Damien pulled her against his chest, fingers threading through her hair. Do you ever regret it? Switching those cups? Everything that came after? Rosalie thought about the question seriously. She thought about Marcus bleeding from a gunshot wound, about Elena dying on a study floor, about nights spent terrified that Russian assassins would break through doors and end everything. She thought about the violence and fear and constant danger that had defined those early months. Then she thought about where they were now. The foundation. The lives changed, the community built, the man beside her who'd fought so hard to become someone better. No, she said firmly, I don't regret any of it, because it brought us here. To a brownstone in Brooklyn? To a life worth living. She turned to face him. You're not the king of an empire anymore, Damien. You're just a man trying to do good in the world. And I'm not an invisible housemaid. I'm your wife and partner in everything that matters. Everything that matters, he repeated. I like the sound of that. They sat in comfortable silence, watching moonlight stream through windows that didn't need bulletproof glass anymore, in a house that didn't require armed security, living lives that no longer demanded constant vigilance. It was ordinary. It was peaceful. It was everything they'd fought to build. 10 years after Rosalie switched poisoned teacups in the Moretti estate, she stood in the same Brooklyn Community Center, now expanded to 3 times its original size, cutting the ribbon on a new medical clinic. The Mercer Moretti Health Center would provide free primary care to anyone in the neighborhood, regardless of insurance or immigration status. It was funded entirely by the foundation, staffed by volunteer doctors and nurses who believed in the mission. Rosalie's mother attended the opening ceremony in a wheelchair, her arthritis finally under control thanks to years of consistent treatment. She smiled with pride as her daughter addressed the crowd. Damien stood beside her holding their daughter's hand. Little Catherine, named not for Damien's mother, but for the idea of renewal and second chances, was 6 years old with her father's gray eyes and her mother's determination. She watched the proceedings with the kind of serious attention children had when they sensed something important was happening. What is Mama doing? Catherine whispered. Helping people, Damien whispered back. Just like we talked about. Why? Because that's what we do. We help people build better lives. Like you and Mama did? Damien smiled. Exactly like that. After the ceremony, Rosalie found them in the crowd. She scooped Catherine into her arms and kissed Damien's cheek. Another successful opening, he said. Another brick in the wall. Rosalie looked around at the clinic, at the community members exploring the new facility, at the tangible good being created. You know what's wild? This single clinic will help more people in 1 year than the entire Moretti criminal organization helped in 30 years. Different kind of empire, Damien agreed, but a better one. That night, after Catherine was asleep and the house was quiet, Rosalie and Damien sat in their garden drinking wine and talking about the future. The foundation board wants to expand into other cities, Rosalie said. Philadelphia first, then maybe Boston. Can we handle that kind of growth? We'll figure it out. We always do. She refilled his glass. What about you? Any regrets about the life you left behind? Damien thought about his father's empire, about the power and fear and violence that had once defined the Moretti name. No, he said finally. That world was dying anyway. I just had the sense to walk away before it buried me. Your father wouldn't understand. My father's been dead for 15 years. His opinion doesn't matter anymore. Damien pulled Rosalie close. What matters is this. Us, Catherine, the foundation, building something that lasts because it's built on helping people instead of hurting them. Rosalie kissed him softly. I love you, Damien Moretti. I love you, Rosalie Moretti. He smiled. The woman who saved my life by switching teacups and then refused to let me waste the second chance she gave me. They sat in the garden until stars filled the sky above Brooklyn. 2 people who'd survived assassination attempts and federal investigations and the weight of a legacy built on blood. They'd torn down an empire and built something better in its place. Not because it was easy, but because it was right. And sometimes, in a world that rewarded violence and cruelty and taking what you wanted regardless of who it hurt, doing the right thing was the most radical act of all. Somewhere in the city, people slept peacefully in homes protected by programs the Foundation funded. Families received medical care they couldn't afford elsewhere. Kids learned skills that would let them escape the cycles of poverty and crime that had trapped their parents. The Moretti name, once synonymous with fear, now meant hope. That was the legacy Damien and Rosalie had built together. And it was a legacy worth every sacrifice, every hard choice, every moment of terror they'd endured to get here. The invisible housemaid and the wounded king had become partners in redemption. And their empire, built on second chances instead of violence, would outlast any criminal organization that had come before. Because in the end, the only empire worth building was one that made the world better instead of worse. And they'd done exactly that, together.